But it's just been,
Hey, wild question. Do you have an Apple Watch charger here?
no,
Okay.
no, I don't. No, you know when I got this? I mean, not that's the age of the charger owners, but I had this since 2014. It still functions. Now, I will tell you the battery life on it is not as good.
Oh, yeah, that's why mine died.
Yeah, this, like, funnel down.
Good Barbie card. Is that one? Well, it's me.
I put on the list.
Good morning.
But, yeah.
I'm
Would be good,
gonna
'cause
go
then they
check
can
the
get
audio.
information, like, about what
I'm gonna go check the audio.
We do a monthly meeting. Sometimes it's Zoom, sometimes it's in person.
Okay.
What's up?
2 months. I think I can. You get 2 people, right? That's it. I'll put her on my list. Protocol.
That was.
Yeah.
Actually, the bigger really might actually.
You were so stressed.
I'm good dead, huh?
51 showings?
Yeah. I already have 3
That's a lot.
offers
It just went live, right?
yesterday.
You gonna come to the class and talk about it?
No, I have to go up and organize it. And then might come down and afterwards.
Yeah. I have an update for you if you want.
Oh, okay.
Good, I mean, a good one. Like,
You can actually get them.
yeah, but like he took the beat.
Okay.
So,
Good. All right, I'll bring it back down.
cool.
Ready to hop off your bike. Hi, I'm Erin.
Nice to meet you, Trey.
Hi, Trey. Good to meet you.
Too.
Hi, I'm
Hi.
Lindsay.
Nice to meet you. I feel like we've met before.
I don't think we've met in person. I'm not sure.
Well, good to
Maybe
meet
not. You too.
you.
Lindsay's the new, that is old.
Oh,
I'm like,
It's from last week.
I'm almost positive, yeah. It felt cold.
Oh. Well, that's interesting.
that is interesting.
Oh
Okay, so nobody drank it.
no, I did, I filled my mug twice. We're good?
Yep,
I can
hear it from out there.
Do you think this is all from last week?
Yeah, we're pretty sure it is.
Has nobody been in progress?
That's me.
Yeah, there have been people in here.
Trey, you want to try?
Oh, yeah.
Pardon me, Dave.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
Oh, you're good. So everybody had a plate there. I didn't.
Last Thursday, at this meeting.
Oh, gosh. I had no idea it was even there.
That's okay, no, we know.
So we need a screen share. Oh, the screen share is being paused.
Here I am, all excited about.
This is the hardest part of the whole thing. What's up? I did share a screen with this. Yeah, it's not working.
I'm Lindsay. Hi, Lindsay.
Nice to meet you. Are you out of this
Same.
office or
Sure.
a different office?
Well, I work on the Liz Hamburger team, so
Okay.
most of the time I'm at their office. And used to
Okay.
work, so-
Excellent, very good.
Because I'm logged in and I can't see. Now I can see. Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, we're getting Roxanne on the line. Okay. 10:01. This is actually gonna probably be much short and be much more discussionary. I'm just making up words. Because this is the section. And I have to ask Rachel to print some pages. And we got those done. Like these tactics here are, these are the beefy ones about actually like the attitude of the shifting market and, you know, really how to handle the mental side. Like the graph that I showed earlier, the last couple of weeks about the kind of the roller coaster, right? It's like how to create new expectations for the buyers and sellers. And I think that's best learned through like talking about what we're seeing and like how we're discussing it. So it's funny. The attendance, I was talking to somebody about that. Like we had like 45, almost 50 people in the first week, and then it just goes down and down and down and down. It's like people want to believe that they're going to learn about it, but then when they actually start to learn about the basics, it's like, well, this isn't as exciting as I wanted it to be, or this is not right. And it's like
Work is never sexy.
no, it's not right. Like winning is not sexy. So I talk about that all the time with the team over at the other office. It's like Jordan didn't win under the bright lights. He won at 4 o'clock in the morning when he was shooting the same exact shot from the same exact place on the court over and over and over again. And then he just gets to cash that paycheck of that hard work under the lights.
Right.
And people get confused about that. And the market has been so the market has been so high.
Sorry, I had to stop for food.
I mean, it's fine.
I couldn't make it 3 hours. I guess.
The market's been so good that it's been very forgiving of those types of things, and we're starting to see. Megan and I were just talking, and I can say this zero judgment on it, but like, you know, there are agents now, newer agents, even probably you qualify in this category. Again, no judgment of it, but like who just don't know the hard work of some of those basics, and we have to like double down and really pay attention to those things. Like the last section, so next week is like there's like the bulletproofing the transactions and some of those things. Bob, last week, how many deals did he say you lost?
3 or 4.
4.
Yeah,
Right?
I see it. I've been in this 4 years and like you knew beforehand, but you aren't, we all got lazy.
Yeah, it's definitely different. It's definitely different.
It's
So,
frustrating because you see, especially listing or your other agents in your transactions too, like you can see them not know what they're doing
Mhm.
too. So it just makes it.
yeah. So as I was leaving the house with my super uncooperative 7-year-old, I actually left my shit book back at the house, so I might have to steal them. I'll come to see. There's a display when I was getting one.
I think it's Saran.
The crowd is dwindled here. What is going on?
Yeah, that's what he was just saying. He said the first call was like 40, 45 people between, you know, those
Yeah.
online and here.
It's been so beneficial. I was supposed to like even have my glucose testing today. It's like a 2-hour testing. And I even switched it to Tuesday because I was like, I can't miss shift. Well, especially because I feel like I need to learn this.
Yeah. Yeah, people were walking away with those, so they attached them.
Yeah.
Oh.
I'm about to honest.
Yeah, that's why they're saran wrapped on or whatever they are. We were in the Queen Street office.
Yeah, I gotta know about.
I know, because I got tracked down the paper one and I was like, no, mine's from, well, you gave it to me for 3 years ago, but I was like, I did not.
Mine, actually, I don't remember who gave it to me, but I have the date of February 09 in
Ooh.
mine.
My first
So right when
MREA
you-
book,
Yeah, right when it came out. Somebody gave it to me. I don't remember who though.
my first MREA book was a gift from Mindy.
Wow.
She just bought all those books that you recommended. I saw her post. I'm like, man, I should. She got all 4 of them.
Yeah,
We talked about
I haven't
that.
written down, but I'm currently reading one right now. The Color of Money, Black Banking in America,
Okay.
that PAR is gonna do a book club reading on next, like in a week and a half, so I have to finish that one first. It's for like the DEI committee.
Mhm.
It's really good, like insanely good.
I
So,
saw a keynote speech in December from an economist. And he was talking about like,
Does anybody in here need one?
yeah. Yeah.
yeah, he's like picking
I
off
just
stuff.
picked all the tape off. Thank you.
Yeah, I have one at home, but I forgot to bring it, but
Let's do
thank
this.
you.
You can use it while you're here.
We're gonna use it because there's a couple of sections where I just felt like for me to try to capture it on a slide was maybe a little shallow. But again, this was probably, this class will probably be a little bit more casual than the others, and definitely not as long. These tactics are. Tactic 6 is slightly outdated. Tactic 7 is where we get into pricing ahead of the market, right? Which is huge, a huge conversation to have right now.
Yep.
Tactic 8 is standing out from the competition, staging, right? Like we don't need to spend 25 or 30 minutes on staging. And then the last one is creating urgency. So we're gonna spend the most time on pricing ahead of the market and creating urgency.
Yep.
And again, that's gonna be a lot of discussion. But I do want to start with talking about the internet lead conversion aspect. And I think it's interesting because, right, you go all the way back to the topics that we've covered as far as studying where your leads are coming from, studying where your business comes from, studying your ROIs, holding your money accountable. And essentially what Gary says in this chapter, almost verbatim, is if you need to have a website, like internet, some type of internet lead generation is essentially unavoidable. I would argue that one of the interesting things about this chapter is that the definition of internet lead generation that he holds in this is if we take that as gospel, as non-negotiable, I think it will drive different behaviors for us. So we'll talk about that. But first I'd like to, summary here. So today's tactic 6 up to 9. And then we're going to go through the rest of the book next time. So from what we've talked about before, anything that anybody's done or thought about differently or observing in the market, or any ahas that you're still like stewing on?
For me, I'm kind of in a rut, and it's the mental. And I remember all the work. I just don't want to do it all. You know, I'm still, I think, a little resentful of how easy it's been.
Mhm.
I'm like, "Shh,
I love that because I think so many people are afraid to like say, I've gotten lazy.
I'm
And
like,
like, I don't
just-
want to do it. I'm freaking tired.
Yeah,
I don't
like,
wanna
I
do it.
just don't want to do. You know, that's kind of where I'm in
there.
a pity party right now,
Hmm.
you know, because I just don't want to do it all.
So
You know,
I think
I
that's,
mean, geez, it's like, it was a lot of work.
I think that's really valid. Can we talk about, okay, so can we talk about
Really hard.
the Thursday that Governor Wolf announced we shut down? And how did we feel Friday?
I was on the friggin' board and I was president at RAAC. And so I don't really remember how I was feeling because I was on Zoom calls 3 times a week. And, you know, everyone in my office was, and I'm like, we're on it. We're working, we're
Mhm.
working, we're on it. You know, it was,
Crazy pressure.
yeah, like, you know, when I signed up for the job, they're like, oh, 1 hour meeting once a month. No, it was like 3 and 4 Zoom meetings a week, and, you know, talking with PAR and NAR and your legislators and trying to figure out like how we can open back up and do it legally, and like, it
Yeah.
was a lot of friggin' work.
Yeah.
And like the membership doesn't know, doesn't care, didn't, all they want to do is complain, and I'm like, you have no idea how much work we're going through right now.
so
To
why
get
didn't you
you
quit?
open.
Why didn't you quit?
Because it was my responsibility to see it through.
Yeah. In that capacity.
Yeah.
Why didn't you quit real estate then? Have you been in for long enough that,
Because as hard as it is, like in the process, I can see like the end result and what that will bring for me and my kids. I know what we need and what I'm working towards, and so I felt like my only choice was to push through, because what is the other option?
Right.
You know what I mean? The other option doesn't look as good as if I would just push through and get to the finish line. So,
yeah, a real job?
yeah.
I think,
That's a lot of mine. Like, I'm coming from teaching and I
Yeah.
knew how fucking hard I worked Monday through Friday, just to make a bi-weekly $2,000 paycheck. I had a newborn during COVID shutdown, but we lived within our means, so I didn't need the money at the time, but then you think about in this job, if you put that effort in and how, I don't want to say easy, but I have that perspective where working for someone else like that. I'm like, if I can do this little bit and have a business that's successful for me, that's awesome with
Yeah.
kids especially.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I think that's something that you have to remember, because the longer I get away from like the real job, the further you forget, like, oh, actually I have to be up and at work and Monday through Friday and the commute and and
Even on my lazy days, if I put in 3 or 4 hours, I'm like, oh, I didn't have to spend 8 hours at school.
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So what we just did
Yeah.
there, that mental level shift that just happened, because it's like the resentment's real,
Mhm.
right? That's why we're gonna go back a slide. Oh, there it
Hey
is.
Joe, real quick.
Yep,
Sorry, I'm always like 10 minutes late. It's because I go to the gym from 8 to 9 every Thursday.
you're good.
Someone rushing to get here every day.
You feel good? You swole?
I don't know. It's kind of not a great workout today.
But you did it.
My whole body hurts. I've been on
Very tired.
a push-up marathon.
I saw a video,
Oh my God.
You did a push up?
90, I think.
90 push-ups on Monday. I'm doing 10 push-ups for every appointment we've set. And
My body hurts
oh
from
my
this
God, I
thing
can
right now.
barely like I could
Good
barely
thing
like
you don't have hair to
get my,
wash.
I could barely
because-
get this shirt off the hanger. Oh God. Yeah, so the resentment's real, and that's why I actually keep that part at the top of the slide of the two shifts, the mental and the activity shift, because, and the mental shift is why the class gets smaller. It literally never doesn't get smaller. Every time. It's because people make the choice not to keep going. They decide that, like, because the choice to not continue to double down, like, by the way, the people that are in the room are people that are gonna keep powering through. Because the decision to not give in or to keep figuring out what it's gonna take it's a decision you make every day, right? And so, like, being super attached to your goal. So now it starts to make sense. Like, now you can rewind to like week 1 where we talked about starting with goal setting. And you're like, but it's a shifting market. Like, I need to figure out how to get my deal across the closing table. I'm like, yeah, and pay attention to your goals, because tomorrow when you wake up and don't want to do anything, it's got to be meaningful enough that you're willing to change your skill set or script and role play again or whatever, right? Go back to those basics, that kind of grind that you might be resentful for. And again, that resentment is like, I don't want to say it's a across the board emotion, but it's a very, very common feeling. Like, especially people who have been in, knew it was hard, then it got easy, and now it's getting hard again. They got so relieved when it got easier, right? Like, if you only knew easy and you're like, oh, it's changing, I can figure it out. Like, you don't know exactly, you actually don't know the dread that you should have, right? So, like, not to be too scary there, but, like, because in shift, if you read the words between the words, and some of the sections where he talks about like 3 hours of lead gen a day. Like, when was the last time in 2021 somebody was doing 3 hours of lead gen a day? Like 3 hours of showings, right?
Unless they were at like a networking event or
Right,
something
exactly,
social.
exactly.
Yeah.
So I think I'm glad that you shared that.
Well, thank you.
And the reason I took it
That's
back.
where I'm at.
So the reason I took that back to COVID is because COVID was nobody signed up for that shift. And it was so sudden that, and I distinctly remember, because I was doing a lot of coaching then. And so it was very abrupt. It was completely up beyond our control. And what that kind of emotional whiplash that happened there, it's happening slower now because like the market's sneaking up on people. And then by the time they realize that the market is shifting or that like the deal just got harder or whatever, or the rates are ticking up, by the time they see that, now they're like mad about it. Whereas it like you could be mad at the COVID shift, but it was like you also had kind of almost had something external to blame. Right. So we talked about that a lot in the coaching community because it was like we were coaching people whose businesses were shut down. I mean, Pennsylvania and Michigan were great examples. California is extremely hard to do anything out there. So just figuring that part out. So the mental shift is real. Okay. Any other ahas or anything else that like being a part of this community has created awareness for?
Honestly, man, it's just good to hear from other people,
Mhm,
you know?
Yeah.
It's good to know you're not alone.
mhm.
Yeah.
I've done a lot better with my, one of my biggest faults is converting. Kind of hang out in the background, so trying to convert appointments and people have been dragging my feet more. Like me making the effort to like find ways to make them get in front of me and.
Can we spend some time talking about that today? Okay. You okay with that? Let's do it. So converting and kind of moving people purposefully through, we're gonna talk about pipeline a little bit. Anything else? So good to hear from people talking about that. Odd. Okay. So there it is. The reason I left this slide was for you. The two shifts, the mental and the action. The market does not determine your success, it simply determines your strategy, right? So going back to that, like knowing that there's going to be a grind, knowing that there's probably going to be different or hard work that's ahead. First, you have to mentally choose that, and then you have to decide what those activities are going to be, and just be super committed that you're going to go down that road. I wanted to bring this slide back because this slide is where, like, the reminder on the daily of the consistent lead generation, lead conversion, right? Like as Abby was saying, of like getting people off the fence type of thing, or like where are they in the pipeline? Where are they in the process? It has to be consistent, because if not, especially in a shifting market, this can happen in a good market. What happens in a good market, like let's take the 2021 market, is that you end up spending time servicing business and not generating business. And so then you go through that cycle. The problem here can be that you end up not doing consistent lead generation activities, not because you're servicing business because you're not as busy anymore, but it's because you're not committed to it and your schedule, and you just get soft about like your commitment. And then you end up really paying the price because it's shifting market. You're seeing fewer number of transactions. That cycle on the top cannot just be painful. It can kick you out of the business, because those downturns can be so dramatic on like generating opportunities to revenue that the gaps just get bigger and bigger and bigger and harder to cover. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
What I'm describing, not to be like doom and gloom, but that's why I wanted to show this, because just chipping away, if you spent 1.5, 2 hours every single day, Gary says 3, if you even gave 1 hour, 1.5 or 2 hours every single day, you know that you're at least covering the baseline. And when we go back and talk about pipeline later today, and like buyer and seller emotions in a shifting market, and how to not control those emotions, but to control the expectations of those emotions, that daily grind of that will lead to a more consistent, predictable revenue. So at the beginning of Tactic 6, this was one of the quotes, and I thought this was big, right? A shift forces you to rethink almost everything you do. And like, we're talking about it now. It's like you start to doubt whether that some of the things that you've done are gonna be good enough. You start to like rethink, like, do I wanna do this at all? Right? It's actually the first sentence, by the way, of the packet. But to me, like, that was really big, right? So I'm gonna read just from that section here. The scarcity of business and the competition for it tugs at your pocketbook and tests your willpower. One crucial area you may have to reassess is your internet strategy, which sits at the crossroads of expense management and lead generation, right? We just talked about that at the very beginning. I was saying, we've already covered expense management. Now we're gonna kind of slide into internet leads. The shift has forced you to remargin your business and cut spending on everything that isn't leading to real financial results. As a result, the expenses of your internet strategy are now under serious scrutiny. The shift has also forced you to refocus your lead generation on methods that deliver motivated leads ready to buy or sell today, and even demand that your long-term activities yield as much near-term business as possible. Okay. So from a high-level structural standpoint, I'm going to say that this chapter is, and I said it's a little outdated, and I'm saying that with love, because I think that just general consumer behavior online has gotten, our attention spans getting shorter, and consumer behavior, people are, there's something that Google talks about, it's called micro moments. They focus on the micro decision-making process. And so what they want to do at Google is they want to present as many possible options for you to be a consumer through their platform at the micro moments when you might make a decision, and then 2 minutes later, you wouldn't have made the same decision, okay? And so, what's that? What?
I said something bad. I said a bad word.
Oh, it's true though.
He said these bastards. Your chest, it's true.
It's like they have like a published on it.
Yeah.
I just feel like it's just gonna, it's gonna all trickle down eventually. It's gonna be more in demand. Never mind.
What? Well,
Like Amazon created like on demand.
Yeah.
I feel like where everyone just wants everything to look at the switch.
Mhm.
Like I want to see a house now, you know?
yeah,
And it's just like the tech companies are literally, I feel like they're still driving, like making everything even more convenient.
It's psychological warfare.
Yeah, I get
You
this,
know.
that shipping takes more than 2 days. I mean, we're all victims.
so I was talking to somebody in DC, so it depends on where the Amazon hubs are, but I was talking to somebody in DC, they ordered something at 9 a.m. and it was there by 2.
Insane.
Yeah, so there's like the rapid shipping hub, and so we can go down that,
Yeah,
we can go down
that-
that trail in a hurry.
I know.
So and you were there, I think maybe for part of the speech from Jeff Hoffman. Did you see that? Yes?
No,
Okay.
I don't even know. who
You
Jeff-
nodded yes.
No, I was trying to think, like, I don't even know who Jeff Hoffman is.
So Jeff Hoffman was the CEO of Priceline.
Oh, yes, I was there, yep,
Okay,
for
Pretty
that
sure
show.
about this.
yes. Well,
Share that, please. It's
It was
mine.
an amazing speech. I wish I could, it's in a locked up vault of that group that we're part of, but there was something that he talked about. So he talked about, and I did mention this before, what their superpower was. Does anybody remember what Priceline's superpower was?
You said,
Go ahead.
you remember?
I remember, but I'm trying to put.
It
words
wasn't
to
travel.
It was to link people who didn't realize they wanted to travel.
Yes.
to
Yes.
Travel.
And the real underlying superpower was algorithm.
Oh,
Yes.
you stole that. I was gonna say, everybody, but it was the algorithm.
We were
because,
there.
Okay, so that was theirs. What is Amazon's? Because you just said, like,
Their superpower is delivery.
their superpower is delivery.
It's logistics, literally.
Correct. So it makes sense then that Amazon is the first of any consumer good exchange to dabble in drone delivery,
Yeah.
right?
They did
Because it's in their column of superpower, which is logistics and delivery, right? So they start, what did Amazon start as?
Bookseller.
Book.
Yeah.
Right.
Small out of a garage.
So they started as a book seller. How did they get where they are?
So here,
I don't know.
just a little story from what I used to read a book, but he pretty much realized he was not in the book business. He wasn't, he had a like epiphany, like I'm in the delivery business.
Yes.
So I don't have to just deliver books. I can deliver anything I want to and charge a fee for it pretty much. And that's what he does.
Yeah, so this is relevant to the internet conversation, by the way,
Yeah.
regardless of shift or not, because what happened there was they, and all of these companies, Zappos is another phenomenal
Yes.
story. You can read the book Delivering Happiness. What was their superpower? Delivering a great customer
Service.
good customer service.
Experience.
Right? And so, that was theirs, and so identifying that, and it goes back to the earlier conversations we've had about what's your value, like, what's your value proposition, what's your goal, what do you intend your business to look like? Because now, when we get to internet, it's like, what's your internet presence? Not just your story, because we talked about that last week with Lindsay, but also like, other Lindsay. But like, what's your superpower? Because when you think about what makes those companies great, if you're following them and you think that it's the connection aspect of it, right? That's actually not necessarily what the superpower is going to be. So you got to figure out like what would make a relationship start online? What's the item that you can do, and how can you, if your superpower is delivery, right? Then you get so good at that through books that you can then offer all of the products. So you need to think about that from the standpoint of your business, because one of the things that I do think is absolutely timeless in this chapter is something that we're going to talk about in a second. But when he talks about rethinking everything you do, you might have to rethink what you believe your internet strategy is, or even what you believe internet lead generation looks like. So how does a website earn its keep? This is the thing. This is what I believe is the timeless takeaway from this chapter. How does a website earn its keep?
When you say that, what do you mean, like keep?
How does it
Like the
how does it
traffic?
have a good return on investment? How do you know that the
Are
web
people calling you?
are people calling you?
Also, people like driving to your site, because sometimes like that's also effective, because like even if they're not doing business, like, and they're not buying or selling a house, they might go to your site, they might see something that catches on, and they've like word of mouth will spread.
Mhm.
They'll talk to Mr. Smith, say, hey, Mr. Smith, I've seen Fahad or Joe's thing online, like give him a call. I feel like that's also matters to like the traffic that you get.
I'm so glad you said that, because you're wrong. So it's literally on the slide. Not in views. It's not in the clicks or views. The only way that a website can hold its return on investment is that it creates opportunities to do business. And we get deceived into what you just said. So that's why I'm glad you said it better than I could have ever said it, because that is an Achilles heel for the internet.
I think
Is-
that's what the tech companies want us to believe.
Yeah.
That's
You know,
why.
when they're trying to say, oh, you can have X number of clicks, and, if you buy our product or whatever, you can get X number of this or this. But that's their.
Who pays a rent or mortgage? Yeah, do you send your payment in internet views?
Well, it's like you said last week about the fishing. Are you going out and hunting, or this is a fishing? If you're just putting your information out there and somebody maybe takes the bait, that's great, but that's not doing business.
So let me
So I guess that's.
let me reframe what I said. So I'm glad you said I was wrong, but what my thing is, not the view, but it's called click to action. So they see the website and they take an action afterwards, like call you, email you, or some type of meetup. That's how you know, like, if your website is effective now, if there's any actions being taken from it, and
Mhm.
where it's deriving you some production or even an opportunity to network, then get some leads.
You just gave like 3 or 4 things that it could be, and I'm narrowing it down to just one. It is literally just one: opportunities to do business.
Okay.
Good question for you.
Yes,
You're not doing conversions, because that's a whole different facet, correct?
but it's part of it, right? So
So is it measured, like what Phil is saying, is like the success measured on the business or like opportunities?
do you want to walk through what that conversion funnel looks like?
Sure.
All right, so at the top of a website is what? Like, what's the very first measurement that you're gonna have that tells you whether a website's performing in any capacity?
Are you getting names?
No, tippy top. Names are actually further down.
Traffic, right?
Traffic,
Yeah, traffic.
views, clicks, right? So views,
Shares.
get them there. Views get them there. Okay, so what's the next one?
How long they're on your site,
Time on site is a good measurement. What else?
multiple clicks, like how far into the.
What are they clicking?
Like your listings or your,
Calling you, your phone number,
That's
emailing.
further down.
Um,
At the top, still at the top, so views and then clicks, time on, right? It's the activity they spend on the site, okay?
Activities, okay.
So here's the danger zone. If we believe that that is a measure of success and we don't drive down to the next level of the funnel, we miss the opportunity to do the one thing, which is to create opportunities to do business. If we get deceived into thinking that the traffic is the win, we will lose. Because the real win is relationships. We can't do business with somebody we don't have a relationship with. So the summary, and I'm just blowing all of the slides, but the summary of this conversation is really that, like, I think that's the meat and potatoes of what this topic really is. And it's a little bit different because he goes into detail in the section and we will talk about some of these things, but he talks about, we're going to look at the internet lead generation model, but he goes into detail about landing pages and some things like that. Hey, bless you. Consumer behavior's changed a little bit because the consumer's gotten a little savvier and a little bit more demanding, and there's more online right there, there's more availability. So a simple landing page where you have to register to do a property search, that has been watered down because the competitive nature of Realtor and Zillow and some of those places that they read this book early and they said, we're going to have one thing we deliver, and it is access to information that consumers want about the home buying process, and we're going to nail it. And they did it, and they did it faster than realtors. And so Gary said for a long time that it was a battle of data and a battle of consumer mind share about it online, and he was totally right. But I want you, because the one thing that it doesn't go into, there's no mention of TikTok here. The book was written long before TikTok. But I know somebody who makes $500,000 a month
From TikTok.
from TikTok.
what?
Yep.
That makes me resentful.
Those can't drive traffic.
And he doesn't have a link.
Honestly, what is he selling?
$500,000 a month. How do you do that on social media? Let's think about that. By the way, super smart. Not some,
Is he drop shipping anything?
no delivery, no physical delivery.
What is he selling? Just himself and his like content?
Okay. How's,
My story.
So TikToker, they get YouTubers get and TikTokers get paid based off the views, like how much views
Why?
they get. Because I don't know, to be honest. I'll be honest. I don't know, but I
Who's
know
paying
that.
Advertisers.
Yeah,
why?
because they can promote their
They
brands
can
and
expose their product,
exactly.
Why do they want to expose their product?
because then people will buy it.
Because that is doing business.
Yes,
They're influencing.
They're in, so this is real. This is real life. I know this guy, okay? So how do you earn $500,000 a month? Is that you drive content at the top of the funnel that's so compelling that people travel through the funnel, and that what you can get, the number of people that you can filter down to the bottom is worth $500,000 a month. Your content is so.
we need to bring that guy in here.
Look,
We need a speaker.
So. And he's online, like you can go find these people, like if you go find somebody on YouTube or TikTok who's got north of 20 to 30,000 followers, there's probably a financial gain to that.
Absolutely.
You say absolutely, but like, that's kind of crazy. Right? Well, and because how do you, I'm like blowing your mind.
I'm too old.
Watch this A for Adley all the time. And it's like they just play house all day. And I'm like, why are you watching kids living their life?
Yeah.
Like, get out there and
No, but
play.
it's
But
also,
that's how they make their money.
I get to watch Harlow and Popcorn, which is some little British girl and her horse. Go figure. And it'll be like, that's the only thing, like, I'm very protective of Lydia's internet consumption. But so it'll be like Harlow and Popcorn, and it'll be like some like little horsey thing, and then all of a sudden there's like a product placement,
yes.
and you know it.
Damn, you
Like,
said it right there.
it's like, spent 3 minutes showing me that horse cleaning.
Well, they're
products.
unboxing products too. Like,
Yeah. Yeah,
If you watch
Right?
it, like they're opening toys, so they're making the kids want these toys too,
Yeah.
because A for Adley has.
Why would
these
you want to do that?
To make, well, they don't work
because
anymore.
the revenue's
They
being
get
huge.
paid.
I mean, huge.
Well, no, I know why
I'm
they would want to do it, but why would a consumer want to like waste their time on that?
Yeah.
I think that's an interesting question, because I feel like I'm
I should listen.
young, like some of that generation, but I feel so old compared to it, because I don't understand it.
Like,
It's,
why would you sit and watch somebody do that?
So I'll tell you what the industry is that the guy is that makes $500,000 a month.
Is
He's
it-
in real
Are we
estate.
gonna be pissed? I was gonna say, are we gonna be pissed about it? Or
He's in real estate.
what does he do? What-
He teaches
real estate.
in 2-minute increments, so fast that you don't even realize you just got taught something. He'll teach about how to calculate a comp or an ARV, or he'll teach it in literally in 1 to 2 minute increments. He'll teach like, hey, like, and there's strategy to this, but like, hey, what are the 3 things that everybody should know before they go out and buy a house? I'm gonna tell you in the next 1 minute. That's the book.
I know this guy that you're talking
So they'll
about.
watch
You
it. 'cause
definitely
it's a
don't know.
I
minute.
watch him on TikTok.
Who is he?
I don't know him, but he had made a contact about touches, about there, where it was specific example.
There's more than one.
No, but there was, maybe tell me if I'm wrong. There was a guy, he was talking about, so there's a realtor. They asked,
He's not a realtor.
he goes around, he says, who's the best realtor? And there's another one where they puts out, they're blasting on their social media, everything. And they asked, who's the best, that guy that's on their social media?
Yeah.
They said, he's the best because the way he's presented.
Yeah.
Is this the guy?
No,
All right, I was gonna say, that's why.
Very descriptive, man.
It's very wild. if you say that.
so, but like, right, there's more than one person.
No, but
making
that's crazy.
monetizing it, right?
But he does like literally 1 to 2 minutes videos, like you said.
Well, it's because it's the length of the content. That's all you can do, right? So you gotta figure it out. And the reason, and this is, I can already tell there's like some wheels spinning in terms of like, for the people that are just like, I wanna make $500,000 a month. Making content, but he also is driving content to his coaching company. He's driving content that creates opportunities for him for his actual real estate investment business, right? So when you think about it, at the end, you need the opportunity to do business.
But that's so intentional, like what you asked, like why? It's actually very intentional because say I'm a realtor, you're a realtor, but you like the real estate content. But then there's a random product placement about shampoo. You're gonna remember that because you're like, damn, this was with this video, maybe I want to try it. So psychologically, it just gets us to try because we felt comfortable based off the content. We thought it was cool or we thought it was funny. So we go take action and do that.
So what's the product you want to sell? Real estate or shampoo?
He's selling both in this situation, I guess, because like the product placement comes in. His real content could be real estate, but there's other stuff that they sell with it. I don't
Real product?
know what to say because they're
What's the superpower?
real estate.
Yeah. Yeah, so the reason I wanted to push this and expand on that topic a little bit more, like, how does the website earn its keep? It's like, at first, you're like, you literally didn't even know what the question meant. You're like, I don't even know what that means. That's how the website earns its keep, is it creates opportunities for relationships. And the lack of intentionality that occurs online is terrifying. There are so many people that I say, you're either water skiing or you're scuba diving. There's so many people that are water skiing across the internet. They're like dropping some content, creating a little bit of interaction, and the vanity measurements, which are those measurements, right, I'm sorry. Those measurements, those are the vanity measurements, clicks and views. The only way you know whether you're actually being effective is if you can move from those to the next one. And if you just stop there, you will and for you as in real estate, that opportunity to do business, the appointment to do business is for real estate, right? But if you do enough of that, where you're driving that traffic truly, where your content is compelling enough and your connectivity is like real and authentic enough, then you might end up like the TikTok guy that I know, who has such value in his true content that other opportunities come along. Don't get blinded by the $500,000 that comes from the product placements or whatever. And actually, he doesn't do product placements. He does, he actually gets monetized through the advertisers that place around it. Okay, and very rarely does he do anything where it's like a true product placement, because it's kind of weird, right? Like you're a real estate guy, right? But the content and the true traffic is so compelling that's really extremely interesting to think about. And I would ask you to write the question down. Do I have a $500,000 internet presence?
No.
Yeah, one thing I really struggle with the internet too is it's so fast moving from a text perspective. It's like, I'm not a I'm not like able to build things like sales funnels
Mhm.
immediately. And then it's like by the time you build one, it's like, there's this new thing now that they're doing. And it's like, so it's just very hard to keep up.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't know how you handle that kind of stuff, but
I mean, I'll tell you that integrity, and Lindsay, who was on last week, that's one of the things we work hand in hand on. We're in a group text right now about something to do with our internet stuff. But a lot of it comes to authentic branding and story branding. A lot of it is that, because it really won't matter what the click funnel is, if you have if you don't have authentic story branding and something that people are drawn to, the rest of it kind of becomes irrelevant. You can't force people through a funnel if they don't believe that the thing at the end of it is worth anything.
yeah.
So starts with that. Then I would say making it super easy. So we have an entire digital vendor that helps us with a lot of those things. And so I'm not going to play expert there, but I would paraphrase some of the things that he shares. Essentially, it has to be super easy. So I'm going to scare the bejesus out of all of you. There are programs, and I use these. Okay. There are programs that actually will watch where your mouse travels on the screen when you visit the website. And it creates like heat spots for the web company to look at, to see like what's performing on the site itself and what's not, what pages are performing, because you can literally watch an MP4 recording of a video of people's traffic. Like when they come, you can see where their mouse goes, you can see when they start to filter. Like it's
Well,
all of
the
that's available.
Same thing as the grocery store, right?
Yeah.
So we were told that the grocery stores are laid out how they are for a reason. So what they did was they just did the same thing virtually.
So who has a bonus card at Giant?
I probably.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
They're tracking everything. you're
That's
buying.
right.
Yeah.
They track your usage because how hard would it be to track? Like have somebody at the end and they're like trying to look through the bag and they're like, what is this, right? But what they can do, they use the bonus card. There's a tiny little discount, which is just enough of a give for you to use it. Target circle, right? So it's just enough of a give. Then they can track consumer behavior. They're watching your recording. And then they have the store layout in such a purposeful way that they can see, and if they want to drive more traffic. So football's on. I walked into the grocery store 2 days ago. What's the very first big giant thing that's right there?
Chips.
Chips. Yeah, right. So it's like we're being controlled or watched in everything we're doing. So better to be the controller and watcher than to just be along for the ride. So in terms of
Pre-hurricanes, Walmart, when you read the Walmart book that came out a decade ago, they will watch NOAA and the weather forecast, and pre-hurricanes, they will ship 3 or 4 times as many strawberry Pop-Tarts to all their Walmarts in that area, because that's what consumers will buy for their hurricane kits.
Well, every single time it snows too, like think of the bread
Yeah.
and the milk,
Yeah.
the eggs, we all run out to
Yeah.
get. Yeah, and now toilet
The
paper.
one thing they do, well, I think at stores that we want to do on our internet sites is even before probably bonus cards is just the idea of keeping you there as long as possible. So like if you ever need milk or bread or the bathroom,
they're all
you have to go the furthest way
Yeah.
possible. So like, how do we do that online is kind of the
Yeah.
concept.
That's a great thought. So here, like, again, we're gonna kind of without smack talking the what's dated and what's not dated. I think that the dance between social media and true web platform-based internet lead generation has gotten much murkier, and being aware of that, right? So like you're saying, how do I keep people coming? So on social media, we know that the algorithms are controlling what's being viewed. And we know that the better we do at creating traffic around a couple of our posts, the more people will see our other posts. The other thing you can do to manipulate sounds dirty, but just take it for what it is creating lists. So if you go into your Facebook and you create lists, you can target those lists out, which actually make the audience, each individual audience smaller. And then only the people that you want to see the thing will see the thing. And you're more likely to be shown on that audience, on that list's pages, than if you just send it to all 3,000 of your friends. And then you can gradually use that to scale up and scale up and scale up. And also ask yourself, what am I doing to go back to the one thing that tells me that internet lead generation is working? What am I doing to create opportunities to do business, even from my social? So I would just, again, take or leave what the book brings to the table in terms of internet lead generation. I think that's a valuable thing to think about, right? Because if you're creating authentic content, and I'm actually a terrible example of this in a certain regard, because I like left social media for 3 years, and then when I came back now, I just use it to talk about my kid, my dog, and like ask funny questions. But the reality is, even still, I get feedback in real life that like, oh, I just like, I feel like I know Lydia, or I love, you know, and so then I can use that. So occasionally I'll ask a question and I'll get like a ton of responses, where that's the opportunity to interact. That's that opportunity to do business. And so I'll get a ton of responses that'll be like, you know, like I asked the question about Oreos. I did a survey about Oreos, which, by the way, the correct answer was in whole sleeve. And
What's the question?
how many Oreos is appropriate to eat in one sitting? And I think Phil said all of them.
I mean, I don't think it's appropriate, but I.
A whole sleeve. No, I tried to stop at 5, but I had like dozens of responses on that, right? And so it's funny because now, was I trying to do business with those people? Was there an opportunity to do business? I would argue not really, but could I leverage that to become an opportunity to do business, right? And so goes to Gary Vee. He wrote a book called Jab, Jab, Hook, which is a great book. I think somebody actually recommended it last week.
Yeah, Aaron did.
Yeah, it's a great book. But that's actually that philosophy where you want to, so the jabs are gives and the hook is the ask. So you want to give, ask on a regular cadence. And Gary Vee is a huge proponent of very regular cadence of communication online, because it just, you teach, there's a gold law, you teach people how to treat you. You teach people how to interact with you online as well, based on the cadence. So this is the internet lead generation model. And I think regardless of what year this was written, which was 2008, the way that was, that I think that this is a valuable thing to write down. So number 1 is to create and maintain an internet presence. I would argue that for you, each of these circles means you need to own it. You need to write it down. So like when it says create and maintain an internet presence, it's like, what is that going to look like for you? The second component of the model is to lead generate for traffic. So that's not what he was talking, that's what he was talking about, is the traffic, right? Which is the deceptive thing that makes you think that you actually did it. But you got to move to number 3, which is to capture, connect, cultivate, and close the leads. So if you are generating traffic and there's zero opportunity for people to actually be captured or connected with you, can you do business? Not in that venue. You might be creating mind share, which is a real thing. But mind share without the ability to turn that into revenue is dangerous. Okay. Does that make sense? Anybody feeling weird about that? Okay. What do you guys think of the model?
I think it's held the test of time.
Right, regardless of like all the other things that he talks about in the chapter. So here's a couple keynotes. The differences for capture, connect, cultivate, and close. This is really key. One key difference is you must intentionally capture enough information to have two-way communication. And you can, like, again, the lines are murky. In 2008, the usage on Instagram would have been a fraction of what it is now, or TikTok didn't exist, right? So two-way communication can be through direct messages. It can be through just purposely creating comments on people's pages, or taking it offline and just saying, you know, hey, I'd love, like, oh, I saw your post. I'd love to ask you like a little bit more information about what I saw there, right? Like, are you doing that? If somebody came to an open house, how would you behave? Would you like think about that? Like think of it online like a digital open house. He actually says that in the book, right? when people come to an open house, do you just sit back and let them travel all around, or do you ask them questions? Right? Because you need the two-way communication if you want to elevate it to business. And then when capturing only, this is really, really big. When capturing only digital information, meaning name and email, but nothing that creates the ability to have a voice, you are still in a passive relationship. You said that essentially, like you're still fishing. You can get an email, but you're still fishing. Because the only way that you can actually move into the relationship from your, if you have a name and an email address, the only way that you can move into a relationship is what?
The two-way conversation.
Dialogue.
Have some engagement afterwards.
So you have an email and a name. What are you gonna do?
An appointment.
What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do with, just tactically,
sorry.
what are you gonna do with the name and email?
Reach out.
Send them a soft touch email.
Cool. They don't respond. Now what?
Right.
Skip trace their number. Not enough.
Look up public records where they live.
Yeah,
That's what I'm gonna do. Send them. I don't know.
that's not a joke.
I send handwritten cards.
Handwritten cards,
So
absolutely.
then that's the next thing, like, so maybe an email, like a really something in writing.
But if you send them an email and they don't respond, now what?
I stalk them on Facebook, try to friend request them.
Friend request
But
them.
you're really still fishing. You're just,
But that thought process there is like, it's like, do you go that deep when you're thinking about your internet stuff? Or like, if you want, and I'm not saying that anybody in this room wants to have a $500,000 TikTok business. I actually have no interest in that. But if you want to get to that level, somebody said the word intentionality, like that is super intentional, right? He, by the way, if you go to his TikTok, you'll see that a couple things. One, you'll see that he actually has, they create graphics for his like opening hook that will, so if you just looked at his TikTok without actually watching the video, you'd still be curious enough to click it because it says like what's the secret of such and such? And you're like, I don't know, but I want to know, right? So you click on it. So it is extremely intentional because he knows that the first move is the click, the second move is the watch, the third move is whatever, right? If there's a call to action, or at the end he's always like, hey, click follow on my YouTube or whatever, right? Why are they doing that? Because they want to get more impressions, because then it's more opportunities for the product placements or whatever, right? See the difference there? It's that super level of intentionality.
he's probably got someone at this point helping him do
He has a
all
whole
that.
staff.
Oh, he is? He doesn't have,
No.
well, I mean, at first, but I feel like at this point, he's gotta have somebody like helping him with that intentionality, a coach
Yeah,
or something, like,
So
compared to
there-
us,
that's a
but-
real thing. There are now like social media coaches,
Yeah.
but I mean, or business coaches who help you work your social media, but like. I mean, if you had the opportunity, it's $500,000 a month.
but
We're
he's
talking
gotten
a-
there somewhere.
We're talking a
yeah.
multi-million-dollar business a year, right? Like,
Definitely gonna have a team.
definitely, you have a whole team, right? So he has a whole production team, and one of the things that you can see when you go to his, if you look at the whole screen of his TikToks, you'll see like similar outfits, because he'll like batch content creation. So he'll batch content creation, he'll essentially create not a storyline, but also he'll create, it's cohesive, right? So it's not necessarily like you need to watch like 47 TikToks to like read the whole story, but you'll understand that if you watch one, there might be a hook that leads you on for the next one, and they batch film that in a way that it's like, it like walks into the next one,
Mhm.
right? Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Mhm.
That level of intentionality is different. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Tactic 7, did anybody need anything else to talk about with the digital stuff? I think page 115, if you have the book. It's like the elements of a great agent website. Ryan and I ran an agent website. It cost us a stupid amount of money to make. I think we might have broken even on the ROI on that over the course of probably 10 years. So just be careful, because to create those super enthralling, higher quality websites that kind of surpass the quick templated ones, it can be a slippery slope, and just be aware that you know why you're doing that and what your goal is out of that time. So on page 115, it has the elements of a great agent website, so kind of foundational, just professional design, tools for buyers, tools for sellers. Think about that. And if you're gonna kind of, like I said, if you're gonna live in the murky world between social media and your website, just think about like, how would somebody be able to do business with me based on coming through the internet? And if you can't clearly articulate that, then it's gonna be hard. Do you remember what Lindsay said last week about simplicity? If they're confused, if you confuse, you will lose.
You're talking about from the marketing aspect?
All of it, because the marketing and the marketing is the story and the tactical is the design. Either one of them can lose somebody. So think about it from that perspective.
You are saying keeping it simple and sweet.
Yes. When was the last time you did a really complicated online transaction? Is
You don't want
Quicken, is Rocket Mortgage making the process simpler or more confusing?
simpler.
Simple to apply.
Simple to apply, right?
They're not the best.
That's their capture, by
I
the
was
way.
gonna
Yeah,
say, like, yeah.
yeah, they do, their delivery is whatever, right? I'm not, there's no endorsement there, but I'm just saying like, because they know that they're like, okay, so even if this is just math, everything is a math equation, right?
Yes.
They know that even if their fallout rate is double the rest of the industry, which I don't know what it is, but I suspect it's higher than like some of the people we like, right? So even if their fallout rate is higher, but they drive so much more traffic at the top of the funnel, they don't care,
Mhm.
right?
They're
We get mad, but they will reach a point of critical mass where their momentum is enough to keep them moving forward, and then they can clean up the rest of the service side. So that's the danger. Zillow did that exact thing. Zillow got enough critical mass on traffic that then they could come back around and clean up the rest of their process.
So to say with Rocket, definitely they're definitely in the algorithm company. For sure, because they
Are you
drive.
sure?
Well, from this perspective, like their fall off ratio, because they don't have the best service, quite frankly, but. They don't care about the people they lose because they get so much. They get so much traffic, their fall off ratio doesn't even impact them because. Easy to apply, like you said, to just keep getting more and more.
So is it
Yeah,
algorithms?
it's not an algorithm, it's just marketing, right?
It's
Mass.
It's mass, it's simplicity. They took a hard thing, like a financial process and simplified it. That's their superpower. The fact that like, because when we apply for a mortgage, and we know we're in the industry, how many pieces are there? How many moving parts are there? There's so many places. it can go wrong.
47,000 pieces of paper.
But, right, but they have Barbie and Ken on the Super Bowl ad,
Mhm.
and in 3 clicks, you're theirs.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That is the gap, right? Think about that.
Simplicity.
That's the gap. They went from the thing we actually know, which is 47,000 pieces of paper in a hard process that has a 1,000 variables that can go wrong, to Barbie told me to go to their website and it says I'm pre-approved in 3 clicks. They can clean the rest of it up from that point forward. They have you.
They do or we do. I feel like
We
we
get to-
clean
yeah,
them
yeah,
up.
They love good
That's
word,
not,
yes.
that's not their problem.
That's actually funny.
Isn't that their marketing one click, like one,
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it's something. to
their
that.
slogan?
Yeah.
There's there's a lot of stuff in here about like the landing pages and stuff like that. Again, I'm not gonna get into the weeds on that to finish that topic. One thing I wanted to read, the challenge of competing, so it talks about like, so. Without reading this entire page, I'm gonna read like a decent amount. Page 117. The internet age has collapsed many traditional competitive borders. Territories that were once highly local are now practically global. Local booksellers compete with Amazon. Area car dealerships wage war with CarMax. But do local real estate agents really have to go toe to toe with national internet real estate companies? Research emphatically tells us no. Now, this was written in 2008.
Mhm.
Is that still no? I think we compete with the Realtor. I think we compete with Zillow. Zillow now has a brokerage, right? So they figured out the way to make that untrue.
I mean, and we can tell in our market. I mean, 20 years ago, you would never get anybody from Harrisburg. You'd never get anybody even crossing the river from Lancaster. You would never get somebody coming up from Maryland.
Mhm.
You would never get somebody from, like the Chambersburg area coming into our marketplace to show property. And now we have people from Philadelphia
Yeah.
driving in to show properties. Are you like out of your mind?
So
Like that regionalism had, once we got bright,
So that's it.
has changed.
That was the. that
So
was the-
here's something to think about. I have two
You know?
people on here, at least two from Pittsburgh that I can see in the audience. And Pittsburgh, Western PA is like the little kingdoms of MLSs. Probably one of the things I least expected when I started to work out in that marketplace for that office was how protective they were of their data and of their boundaries.
Well, that's
And
how
we used to be that
we
way.
used, and it was a huge ordeal to
Yes.
get out of our own, because we used to own our own MLS.
Yes,
At
the West
Rayak.
does that too.
Yeah, we owned our own MLS at Rayak. And so it was a massive ordeal to convince our membership, and some still aren't even convinced, to go into the situation with Bright.
Yeah.
It was
But
massive,
was that the right thing for the consumer?
absolutely,
Not.
absolutely.
It absolutely was.
I mean, if my client asks me about a property I don't really want to show in Chambersburg, at least I can
You can look
tell
it
them
up.
about it, right?
Right?
Yeah.
Or my,
So-
yeah.
Yeah,
In Hunt Valley or in,
For the
Delaware.
regular, you don't have to belong to numerous
Yeah.
MLSs
Yeah.
and spend those copious amounts of money. on
Yeah.
it.
So I'm not like trying to disagree to be a devil's advocate. This is what I'm saying when I say not. Like if somebody hits me up from like say Allentown, right? It's a bit far from me, but they hit me up off the strength of like how my services and I know them. I'm not gonna say, no, I'm not gonna help you. I might say, hey, that's not my region. I don't feel expert.
right,
but
you don't
can I-
have geographic.
Can I refer you to
competency.
somebody? Like I
Yeah,
would
but that-
refer them to
That's
another.
two- you're talking-
That's two different things. though.
because if a consumer who lives in Allentown wants to buy a house in New York,
That's a whole different thing.
That's a
You're-
whole different
yeah,
market.
You're gonna
Right.
help
right?
right away.
Exactly. And now you've got these networks that are much bigger and honestly, you're competing, take it right back to the national companies. You're competing against Realtor and Zillow who have aggregated all the data into one place. So you're gonna end up so it goes back to that. He said, well, that is emphatically not true anymore. That's what we did to create it to be true, because we let those people create those conglomerated data points. And then we forced ourselves to be subservient to them in terms of where the consumers were going for data. It's really big stuff. It gets really nerdy, the website stuff, but I think we're good. I want to move on to tactic 7. Tactic 7 is pricing ahead of the market, seller pricing strategies. Does this seem relevant today?
Yeah, I'm ready to listen.
Okay. So what are the market trends? Who's watching the data? We've been talking about it since the beginning. Who's watching the data?
We talk, specifically, are we talking in regards to inventory or what type of market it is? What are you asking?
So what are the data points we've been talking about to look at?
Back on market, days on market.
Close,
Price drops.
Price
price
drops,
drops.
right? How many price drops have there been in the last 7 days? A lot. Who can pull Bright up without it being too painful and look?
I will.
I have it. You got it? No, I have 3 that I was price dropped and sold last week.
So that strategy worked for you.
Well, it made it fresh in here when people like to see that they get a bargain, I think.
That's actually almost an exact quote from the book.
I really.
Yeah. Buyers always want to feel like there's a value.
Mhm.
And so sellers have to change. That's a seller mindset change, is that sellers have to change from them being in the driver's seat, which is kind of where we were. We're in this inflection point right now where the sellers are starting to come to terms with the fact that like they are not 100% in the driver's seat. Now, Ryan was showing me, he has a little property that just went live. It has 51 showings.
Ooh,
Oh, it's
If
not
you-
his new one, yeah.
Yeah, the new Cumberland one.
7 days, this is just York County, I have mine set on. 77 price decreases.
77 price decreases. How many new?
128,
It's a big ratio, guys.
24 back to active.
Yeah, so 24 came back on, 77 dropped.
Mhm.
So you have almost 100 between those, and how many were new?
128, 44 withdrawn on top of that.
Yeah, because the sellers
Withdrawn.
are greedy. The sellers are
They're
pissed off
so
and greedy.
crazy.
And 28
They'll never
is
get
fine.
their
You think you're resentful, the sellers are resentful. They feel like they're missing the boat, right?
Yeah.
So this conversation is really big because this conversation seems like a tactical conversation and you need tactical information to enter the conversation. This is actually a highly emotional conversation, okay? So that data was important and I would challenge you. So again, I have some folks from different markets on here. I would challenge you to go in and look at that data and know it. I've told the story many times when I was on lockdown for COVID or whatever. I watched, I started to get into the YouTube channel for Ryan Serhant. And one of the stories super long ago, I'd never be able to find it again, buried in one of his vlogs, was the story of how he got into real estate. And he was a hand model and he was a leasing agent in New York City. And he studied the market and he essentially used the data to upsell his rental customers because he didn't know jack and he didn't have any leverage and he didn't have any listings. But what he would do is he would go to these listings or these leasing opportunities and they'd be like, oh, I'm ready to spend $6,000 on a lease. And he'd say, oh, wow. He said, did you know that 3 buildings over, two co-ops just sold for such and such, or one of them just had a price drop and you might actually be able to get a similar price payment to buy one over there in the co-op if you're interested. So he just used the data to become the way that he built his business. It's like bare bones ground level how Ryan Serhant built his $1 million listing business. So the basics work. We need to go back to those things.
Yes.
Like if you're studying the data, now you walk into a listing appointment where you just and Ryan, the secret sauce of Ryan and I, we had like over 90% close rate on our listing appointments. And we would memorize statistics and data because you seem like the expert of them. You become, not just seem, it's not like a fake data, right? You become the expert of the market when you can walk in and say, hey, I appreciate that you'd like to price here, but your neighbors tell me that we shouldn't do that. And they tell me that because they just did a price drop after 14 days of not selling at that price. And I don't want you to be in that situation. Now it's not you being defensive. You are the guide. Right? Because if you're the bad guy, it's a harder conversation. But if you're the guide helping a win-win outcome, totally different. Which goes win-win outcome goes right back to emotion because you got to go what the motivation is to know what a win looks like for them.
I'll just add on to that, when the interest rates went up right at the end of May into June. And I had a listing coming on. We didn't end up getting it on market until the second week of June. And that whole 2 weeks before we went on market, I spent watching the prices coming down and the days on market getting longer to tell my sellers, here's what's happening right now in real time. When we come on market, it is not going to be like it was 2 weeks ago. And managing those expectations was so important. It was so important. Yeah.
One of the best things I did even the last 2 weeks was math. I showed my sellers what a mortgage payment looked like for the buyer last week versus this week. And when you show them that it's a $200 and some difference, they're like,
Yeah.
oh.
So to this, so Andrew actually came into our meeting yesterday and this is the first time, like, I was like, Andrew, please send me this. So he just showed the data from like the last couple decades, actually going back to the 80s to now, like the trend of mortgage. So like he was saying, pretty much show them sometimes to the customers, he was saying, marry the house and date the rate. That's like the saying. And I was like, that's kind of like, he said, it's not his, he got it from online, but that's kind of genius because people are so infatuated with how high it is. But
It's
eventually,
not high, though. It's only 7.
I mean, compared to a 3%, like what they were used to, that's a huge difference.
Compared to
So
what
if you
it
think
could
we're
be.
resentful, they're resentful too. We started today talking
You
about.
kind of have to show data and
Yeah,
like in this
absolutely.
time.
Show
and
We
never-
don't kind of have to show data, we must show data.
You have to.
So
20
you have
years
two
ago, it was
choices.
different. 30
Either
years
you
ago.
can be the bad guy or the data can be the bad guy.
Yes.
But those are your two choices, right?
Absolutely.
So if you don't study your market to the level that you are super confident in that data, you will be the bad guy because it'll turn into an emotional conversation and not in the good way. It won't be the guided emotional conversation. It'll be this. They'll say, I want to get 250. And you'll say, well, I don't think you're going to get that in this market. And they'll say, well, that's what I want. And you won't have anything to say after that Because it's just simply you talking at them, and by the way, there's no rapport left at that point, so you can just start packing.
You gotta start showing, like,
Yeah.
hey, look at this house,
Right,
like, this is why it's set
But-
up and down.
and this, that's why, so last week, when we were talking about language skills and like the capture, connect, cultivate, close type of stuff.
Yeah.
That's when this stuff gets so important, because what books are we reading? What type of books do we read?
So right now, we're reading Split the Difference.
Never split the
Never
difference.
split the difference.
Language
This
books.
is language, sales language.
Why are we reading sales language books when there's so much turmoil in the market?
Because you want to be the one with the night DJ voice to calm them
That's right.
down.
That's right. You have to, so, and it's not that you're gonna sell people,
the
it's
book?
that you.
Yeah.
Again, let's go back to a
Came
math
out.
equation.
That's crazy.
Let's go back to a math equation. And this is what Gary talks about in the shift book up to this point, is that there will be, and let's go back here, right? This quote at the bottom of this page. The market remains full of people who genuinely want to buy and sell. The question is at what price, right? So we're finding the motivated. That was actually one of the tactics earlier on, finding the motivated, right? We're finding them, but fewer of them will have the ability or the willingness to participate in this market. And the difference between you going on 50 appointments and getting 4 of them, or going on 50 appointments and getting 15 of them, is going to be your ability to navigate that journey with them. And it's not going to be, there's a saying, right? Telling isn't selling, asking is selling. So the reason we're doing language books right now, like Never Split the Difference or Exactly What to Say, right? All these books that I absolutely love. The reason we're doing those is because when you're faced against an enemy like the market, you need to be the guide. Guides don't yell and tell, guides ask, where do you want to go, right? So if you go back to that and let's go back to the $250,000 house. Okay. I want to sell for 250. You want to role play that with me?
Not really.
Cool.
I'll do
All
it.
right.
I don't want to put
So
on the
you
spot.
so you want to sell for 250?
Yeah, that's, I know.
Just keep it short.
Yeah,
Yes, great.
Yes.
Okay, so how did you get that number?
so my neighbor sold his house 2 months ago for 275. My renovation is a little bit less than his. That's how I came up with my number.
Okay. So 250 based on your neighbor's house 2 months ago. Have you been watching what's happened? Just out of curiosity, no judgment here. Have you watched anything about what's happened in the market since? the last 2 months?
I just know the interest rates are very higher compared to what it was last year. That's all I've been watching.
If you didn't get 250, what would you do?
I'd be pissed.
Would you still move forward with selling your house if you didn't get 250?
Depends on what I ended up getting, like under that 250.
Okay, how far under 250 is it not worth selling your house anymore?
Nothing less than anything between 240, 250, nothing less than that.
Okay,
So 10 grand.
I didn't say a single statement that ended in a period.
Mhm.
So
Right.
questions.
It's all questions, because like, and that can go further, right? Then you can say, hey, so if the market told us that your house was worth 230 and that you might not get back to 240 for potentially years, now what would you do? Right? It's going to come down to your ability to ask questions like that,
Like,
right?
in
So
that manner.
So when I say we're moving into a heavily skill-based market, that's what I mean.
Think he's.
Yeah, he was just counting. A heavily skill-based market, that's what I'm talking about. The difference between the skill level required in 2021 and 2023 is going to be night and day.
Yes.
And we have a lot of agents who didn't learn the basics because they didn't have to, no judgment, they just didn't need them. And they're gonna have to commit to learning those basics now if they want to make it through.
Or I'm gonna be curious to see those REACT statistics next year.
What percentage of agents?
NAR stats for 5 years is 87% fallout after 5 years in the business.
What is it
After
currently
5
like
years.
right
You
now?
just said
What's
87.
after?
What's currently?
I don't remember. That's the one.
But
that's
that's,
like-
I'd be curious to see it
It's
during
like
an actual.
The first
part-time.
year is like 20, 30, and
There's
then
data
it's
on
like 30.
Do you
40.
remember how many people left in the last crash? NAR reduced by
Yeah, it was-
20% in 1 year.
it was like, thank you, Jesus.
Yeah.
That's what I mean, like,
It
who's gonna
literally
be
was.
weeded out next year at this
Yeah.
time?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So at the leadership level, I'm gonna be super honest
It's
and
like,
transparent.
thank you, Jesus.
Yeah.
Let him go.
I'm gonna be honest and
Really?
transparent and tell you how we're feeling at the leadership level. We have to feed the hungry. So the
Yeah.
agents that are hungry, that show up and want to get better, we're gonna, like, we have to provide value and provide classes like this for those agents. Because the ones who are gonna just coast,
It's not gonna work.
it's not gonna work.
They're gonna
We'll
be,
be here for them when they, if the pain gets real enough,
Yeah.
where they come back and say, I gotta do something different, we'll say, okay. Here, watch this YouTube recording that was 3 months ago that you probably should have been at. And right, like, here's a book. That's why we carry a box of the books, right? Like, we have the resources, but we've got to lean into it. That's the choice. That's the mindset aspect of the shift. That has to happen early on.
As agents, we have to apply it
Yeah.
Yeah, then it comes down to it.
at the end of the day. So like, one thing I do want to share about this, not necessarily off the internet topic, what I'm doing, what's working for me.
We're not in the, we're in the cellar.
Price.
So the seller, so I'm having an upfront conversation like, hey, like I know houses are selling in a week or two. You see my other houses, but this is gonna take a little bit longer due to the market.
How do you know? How long is it gonna take? How much longer?
I tell them like, this might take just upfront, like this might take 2 to 3 months for me to sell it. And they're okay with it, just having that upfront conversation
How do you get that number?
based off what I'm seeing and also data, how long it's taken, even like a
What's our average
property
in the market?
right now. I don't know the statistic, but at least more than 30 days, right?
It was 8 for the last React published.
What was it? What was it 6 months ago?
yeah, but those are, don't forget, those are like 45 days behind.
Right, yeah, but that's
Right.
the concrete data I usually
Yeah.
use to say
Right.
last month was this, we've
Yeah.
Well,
progressed
what was the last one? Just 8 days?
8 days. But over the summer, what, it was 3 or 4?
Is that real? How is that real?
Well,
But it
because it's a lag
depends.
time.
But it
Don't forget.
also depends
Yeah.
on, and going back to recent time, because things are changing very quickly, like week by week.
Yeah,
So when
Days by
you're- when-
days.
When you're talking about a property may take 2 to 3 months, I'm looking at properties that, let's say their values are the same based on the fundamentals of it, but when you go look at the property and one is far better than the other,
Condition.
and the one that isn't in great shape, I can say to them, look, people can be choosy now, and see that house there? They're gonna buy that quick because there's no problems with it.
That's
Your house
the
has
next
got
tactic.
issues.
Right.
Huh?
And
That's the
then,
next
and then, you know,
tactic, stand out from the competition.
Yeah.
Because,
Yeah.
because it starts with price. It's a language conversation around price and data, right? So like, you see how this is a puzzle that starts to
Yeah.
fit together. Like the whole book, the whole picture of how to behave in a shift and how to like win in a shift.
control what you can control. You can
Yes.
control the condition. We can control the price. We cannot control the market. We
Right.
cannot control the location.
What else can we control that starts with an E and ends in tations and matters a lot?
Expectations.
Expectations.
Yes, because that's where that's the gigantic bear trap that you can both walk into, you and the customer. You walk into a transaction, looking at 8 days on the market, not paying attention to the fact that it's changing day by day. And you say, hey, average days on market is 8, but you don't add the asterisk that it's
Right.
changing by the day,
Right.
right?
I would
And
never
you
tell
don't
that to a client right now.
Yeah, then you guys just both did this, and now in 3 weeks, anything more than 8 looks like a failure.
Right.
So who's to blame?
Right.
Yourself, we're not educating properly.
Well, who's gonna blame you?
They're gonna, the seller's gonna
The client.
blame, yeah.
Cool, but you're a team, it's a win-win,
Right.
it's a fiduciary relationship, now you just became adversaries. They lose trust, are you truly knowledgeable about what's going on? This is the underlying, very important aspect of the pricing conversation.
Yep.
All right, so I want to. We're gonna look at some pictures, so look at page 144. If you have it. That's the picture. So if you don't have the book, you're still looking at the picture. I'm sorry, this is the picture before this picture. Anyway, so the picture before this picture on page 144 is how, as a market changes and in a market that's appreciating, the seller sets a price that they want to get, and as the market appreciates into it, they get pleasantly surprised.
Then everybody's a hero and they love you.
That's right. That's
Ability.
right. That's Ryan with his 51 showings,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Ah, great job, Ryan,
I gotta
right?
check out this house later.
I know. Well, what about the people that just did those racetracks?
Well, the conversation I've been having is from our first session about what a seller's market is. We talked about inventory, 5 to 7 months, less than 5. And I've been really explaining how COVID times was that like really specific, less than a couple days of inventory, less than a month. But here, we're now just shifting into this to let them still feel like they're in control.
Yeah.
Like it's still a seller's market, the price, so that they don't freak out as much.
Mhm.
Showing
Because
them
even
that
though-
shift, that
right.
this was la la land.
Yeah.
Especially with interest rates and stuff, that was free money, cheap money. We're still there. We're
And
still in
even-
historical fine
Yeah, and
times.
even
but-
though, we watered down the words, this is historical, this is, unprecedented, but people got so accustomed to it that, now they're saying 7 is like, oh my God, the sky is falling, but that's because 2 was unrealistic and unsustainable.
Yes.
We take a listing for 6 months for a reason, we set the price here for a reason, and even though 6 months and less, 6 months is considered, a seller's market. But our data might say 8 days, but really we're probably closer to like 3-ish months now. But the data is still lagging because we're always looking in the review mirror, but we got to look out the windshield,
You
which
gotta
is.
use your comps. Is Ryan's house
Right.
like a HGTV house?
I have literally zero.
Like my newest listing, I've pulled up 2 other houses exactly like it. Look, this one's been on the market 30 days. This one's been on for 14 days.
Mhm.
This is what is normal right now.
So that's awesome, because
Use your comps.
that's where this tactic and the next tactic collide, which is, this one is about the pricing, which is the tactical side of how to make sure you're having educated conversations. The next one is also about how to make sure you're presenting, and you start to look at like active listings. So the thing that we didn't necessarily do before, and when we're doing a look back comp process, we may not do this, but like pulling up the active inventory in the price bracket that you're going into and look through the pictures and say, how do you think you compare it? By the way, it's a great strategy in a listing appointment to do that. Don't do it blind, look before, because if you pull up the houses and they're okay, you're like gonna look like an idiot.
Yeah,
But, right,
know the address.
but
your
know
homework.
them. Hey, I want to show you 2 or 3 properties that are in the current price point, because things are moving so quickly that I want you to have a real good pulse. So as we go into this, like, you don't feel like I'm telling you something that you're gonna be holding a resentment against later. Because, and then you can snag this graphic. This is seriously right on. I just Googled the image that I needed, and this came up. Pull this graphic out and drop it into your listing presentation, because this shows what it looks like when a seller is behind a falling value market. And then they chase it and they never get their price, right? They start at and that's what you're seeing there, right? So this is the home value dropping like that. And right now, we're kind of in a market where we don't quite know what that trajectory looks like 100%, right?
Mhm.
So we know that if we were to rewind and look at it from the perspective of what happened in COVID, the peak was steep the other way, right? We couldn't keep up with the appreciation. Those bidding wars that were happening were beyond anybody's expectations, right? You would put a property on, you felt really confident, it's a 180 house. Next thing you know, you're like, I can't believe somebody paid 210 and had an appraisal gap coverage, right?
And then it appraised for 225.
Right.
Like, are they out of their mind?
Well, the danger is, we saw what that steepness looked like on that side, and now we're going into another market and we don't know what the steepness looks like. So the conversation here, this is the reality of the home values falling, and I would word it that way. We just don't know what that trajectory looks like, but there's something going on, right? And then this is the expectation ladder, right? Because it starts with their initial hope of what they think they want to get for their property. Then they get out here, the gap has gotten wider. I'm gonna put my fingerprints all over the screen. I'm sorry. The gap gets wider, they correct, right? If you see what happens here is there are points where the gap just gets unsustainable.
And they're gonna
right?
end up with less than if they would have just priced it at the 235 to
That-
begin with
Correct.
instead
So
of.
if
So I'm
at
gonna
this
ask something
at this
about that.
point in time,
Always happens.
at this point in time, if they would have dropped down to here and been competitive with the other homes on the
They would
market.
have sold it right there.
Yeah, and also this time, what does time cost the homeowner?
Their mortgage, their
Their money, their
insurance, their
rents.
carrying costs, their electric,
The
all the
holding costs.
utilities. Sometimes they're paying 2 mortgages, their movers.
Mhm.
How about hopes and dreams?
No, it's
I mean,
true.
that's
No,
like-
it's not being funny, but it's.
Literally, like,
It's true.
yeah, so go back to motivational triggers, right? something made them pick up the phone and call, especially now in a kind of an uncertain time. Most of the people that are gonna call have some type of
Motivation.
some type of life circumstance that's gonna create a motivation, right? Just ask the question, hey, if we end up over here getting less money and taking more time, what does that cost you in the scope of your life? You can attach a financial number to that. Some people won't be financially motivated, but they will be motivated by not getting to move closer to grandma,
Yeah,
right?
Mhm.
And so I challenge you, don't just think logical here. Also, like, because everybody gave logical answers, kind of what I expected, but like, also think emotional. Think about like the satisfaction of the move or the divorce, right? Or whatever, right?
get into a
Like,
new house.
right, like all those life circumstances that are going on that might play a part in it, okay?
So I think she kind of answered my question. I was gonna ask, because
Abby was putting her hand up.
well, I'm sorry, Abby.
No, you're okay, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I just, the one thing I think of too, when I see this, when I present sellers. Is always the buyer determines market value, and while you're doing this, the buyer is now getting ideas in their head, and whether we. If you have one buyer interested in your house, but this is not what they believe, because this is, they think that you owe them something. That's the one person interested in your house, so it's that psychological game as well with
Yeah,
the more days on market and what the buyers think they're entitled to.
that's right.
So that's always something I like to explain to my sellers is that, they determine market value. And if this is the person who wants to buy your house and this is what they're willing to buy it at, this is what we've just created.
And then you get into, like, I don't want to offend anybody.
That's it,
But,
by the way.
a pissing contest, because then it becomes all testosterone. And it's like,
Yeah,
I am not giving my house away. And then you're like, so you're willing to buy your house back for $1,000, right? Because, they'll give you 235, but you want 236 just because it's the principle of the deal,
Right.
because you put in a new whatever.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, I'm sorry, people expect their toilets to flush, people expect new roofs, so, I'm
Well,
sorry
who's
you
seeing-
just did that, but
who's seeing,
this is the value, and if you don't want this one person to buy your house, we'll put it back on the market, but we're gonna have to do a price correction, because then everybody is gonna say, what happened? Why did this contract fall out? Something's wrong with this house, so the next time, so
Yeah.
instead of losing $1,000, you're gonna sell your house now for
'cause you left
$225.
the market here.
Yeah,
Yeah,
You left the market there.
Yep.
And now you still have the bravado,
yeah,
the testosterone,
yeah,
that you're still here, right?
yeah,
But the market has come down.
right.
So you're gonna re-enter the market at a worse place and think that you're just as good. And by the way, you're gonna have to now disclose all those things, and consumer psychology tells us that something, the longer something sits without being picked up. by
Nobody
somebody
wants
else,
stale
nobody
bread.
wants it, right?
Nobody
Exactly,
wants
stale
bread.
bread. So those are extremely valuable things to be picking up in this class. I hope everybody's like hearing. These are the tools, by the way, that you walk into a listing appointment and your conversion rate goes from 75% to 80%, 80% to 85%. And you're gonna need every one of those as things get tighter on the lead generation and conversion cycle, okay?
I just want to make sure I heard them right, because they answered to my questions. So you did say it's better to price it at the right market value
Absolutely.
than like.
You
trying
never
to-
want to chase the market. You always want to price it slightly below where you think. So this 250 house, you go in for the listing appointment, the seller swears on his mother's grave that he wants 250 and he's never going to sell for anything less than 250.
Mhm.
You really think it's a 235 house. Well, then you should try to list it for 233 and get over those objections at the table right there. Because by the time you get your photos done, you get,
Mhm.
it on the market in 24, 48, 68, whatever hours, it really might be a 236 house. And then you might get an offer for 233, and then at least maybe you got a chance.
And
Because if you chase the market, you're never gonna get the price you want. It's always gonna be below, because then the buyers smell blood in the water, and then they're gonna lowball you, and they're gonna send out a 199 offer
Right,
for a 225
and
house.
she just said it, but right here it is. Home values are always falling faster than the price reductions. You're always gonna end up in the
thank you
lag
for sharing.
because the expectations are gonna be at the prior.
Because
the
just
prior
remember, the
location.
data we're looking at takes time to accumulate.
Yes,
So whether you're looking at NAR stats, PAR stats, you're going on Bright, those trends take time to to
Yeah.
gather
Yeah.
and to actually show. So in your gut, before you walk in the house, if you really think it's a 233 house, well, then drop it 1,000 or 2,000 and then push for that number, because you'd rather like be the hero and have somebody come in and write you a 235 offer than, you know, deal with a 225 offer later.
We have a decent group online. I just wanted to open it up because we've had a great discussion in the room. Does anybody online have any thoughts or anything that you're observing with the slideshow about the kind of this overpricing and how to address this within the marketplace?
It's wild.
Full circle.
If not, all good.
The only thing I wanted to ask you, I just want to make sure I heard you right. So as we drop more and more and more the price to the buyer, there's a negative connotation towards that, right? Like as the price goes down, they start having these thoughts in their head,
Yeah, I
like
think it's
like
human
something's wrong
nature
with
that
the
you
house.
think, well, you think you deserve a deal and you think that something's wrong with it because somebody would have bought it by now. I mean, that's my experience.
And
with
if
my
it-
That's
buyers.
my,
And if it comes back on the market, you don't know necessarily, and I tell my buyers is, we don't know the reason it came back on the market, and if the listing agent won't share. Was it because the buyers couldn't qualify? So it had nothing to do with the physical house, it was their financing? Or was it because the seller got, as you say, bravado and pissed them off? And, you know, so the buyers walked away? Or was it because, you know, somebody's grandma died and they had to put their life on hold? Like, you don't know
Talk
that.
about the ogres, that real estate's like the layers, the onions. We
Yeah.
Talk about an ogre. I
Yeah.
mean, the key is it's not just about the sellers, it's about the buyers,
Yep.
it's about all of it.
So on page 147, there's another graphic. And it's just after the first one. I like this. It's the same picture, but I like the seesaw of the people and the money, because that's really what's happening there. It's kind of that battle between those. And I like that quote that because home values are always falling faster than their price reduction, right? So if you look at the cost of overpricing in the shifting market, it's the lower one of those graphics. Fair market value declines during a market shift. Seller hopes a higher initial price will draw a higher offer. Market interest is fragile with high inventory and wanes quickly. The saleable price is impacted by the declining market values, staleness, and competition. Then small price reductions only chase down the market. Properties then only sell when buyers see very attractive prices and the cost of overpricing becomes amplified. That's how that journey goes, okay? So if you look at that, like that's what he's saying, that the cost of overpricing amplifies over time.
And the pain becomes just torture.
So I'm gonna read this. Research supports the fact that sellers and buyers, this is page 148. Research supports the fact that sellers and buyers are typically out of sync with the realities of the market. In a seller's market, sellers tend to dwell in the future and buyers dwell in the past. Sellers want to push prices up and buyers want to hold the line. In a buyer's market, buyers want to place themselves in the future and sellers want to dwell in the past. Buyers want to push prices down and sellers want to hold the line. The net result is a chasm between a buyer's and seller's perception of what a home is currently worth. Is there any better description of what we are currently experiencing right now? Right? And we're in the tipping point right now because it's been a seller's market, but like extremely volatile seller's market, and we're tipping to a buyer's market. And we're almost tipping there in a perspective of like those macroeconomic conditions like interest rates, inflation, those types of things that are at play. Underwriting criteria, has anybody noticed like it's starting to like ease this?
And don't forget the midterms. I mean, in
Oh, yeah.
York County, you know, we have to worry about the midterm election because that causes
Yep.
people to paralyze and to not do anything. When you look historically over time, there's always a frozen period right before the midterms.
And then what happens after?
All heck breaks loose.
Right, so let's pay attention to that,
Right.
right? This is the time to be
Right.
like,
Talking to
to
people
be talking
saying,
to people.
you know, hang tight, there's gonna be more on the market.
Yeah.
You know, just give it, you know, it won't be probably the 6th of November, but it'll probably be, you know, in the early teens of November. Because all those people that are waiting to see one way or another, you know, if your mom has died or going into a nursing home, or if you're pregnant and having a baby, it really doesn't matter, but yet you're still waiting to put your house on the market until after the midterms.
Saying.
This is it. So this graphic also available through Google. This was KW Communicability. Somebody there must have taught a class on shift that was had a couple of really good slides. This was a really good one. This talks about pricing competitively in the first 30 days. I would grab this image if you can on Google, if you need to, snip it up. And this is another great one to pull to a listing presentation because it really shows the activity level. By the way, it says when most offers are received is between week 3 to 4 and 6 to 7. We're not even there yet. We're not even there yet, right? So our market has been so unbalanced. I'll get out of your way. Our market's been so unbalanced for the prior seller's market that we haven't even achieved what he's describing here. But I think the premise still remains the same, right? A property generates the most interest when it first hits the market. So, right? The number of showings was greatest during that time if it is priced at a realistic market value. Ryan's 51 showings in 3 days, right? That's what we're talking about. Starting too high and dropping the price later misses the excitement and fails to generate strong activity. And many homes that start high end up selling below market value. Now, here's the trick for you as a real estate agent is we talked about disappointment equals unmet expectations. If you set this expectation, this leads to a natural conversation. And here's a golden question. If we hit week 4 and we are not sold, how should we behave? What would you like me to do? What would you want to do? Ask those questions. Because if you start to ask those questions as you're taking the listing agreement, you're not defensively calling them at week 4 and saying, hey, do you remember that graph I showed you? Well, it looks like we're starting on the downturn, right? Don't do that because they are also the most excited at that first time. When you're signing the listing agreement, their hopes are the highest, right? And so attaching it, so hey, if we hit week 4 and we haven't sold, what should we do? Because what will their answer be?
Because they're thinking,
What do you think?
yeah, they're like, oh, we'll never hit week 4 because my neighbor's house sold in 3 days.
Right.
So, when you take the listing, do the automatic price reductions at that particular point in
Yeah.
time. So if and when we hit week 5, 6, and 7, are we going to drop by $2,500 or $5,000 or $3,000 or whatever? Get it, all those price reductions signed at the listing.
Yeah.
Because they will forget at week 2 and they will forget at week 3. And then when you call them and say, tomorrow is day 4, the beginning of week 4, I'm going to go ahead and activate this price reduction. They'll be like, what? That. And you're like,
Think of the story, right? So think of the story. This is an evolving story. You've now painted the picture. Hey, I want to show you our REAC stats. Take that along, right? Our Realtor Association stats, which are a 45-ish day look back, tell us it was the things were closing in they were going under contract in 4 days. Now, I just showed you during our listing presentation that 40 properties have come back on the market in the last 7 days. And I've also shown you that statistically, we're going to have the most likely high activity between weeks 1 and 4, right? So all of this leads to a story that you are the guide. Go back to that premise that I was sharing with you. It's not going to be you calling them to tell them that their house is worth less. It's you calling them as a guide to say, hey, we laid all the cards on the table at the beginning at the listing presentation, and this is the way it's playing out. And I am your guide along this way, and I want to make sure that we make great decisions. Right now, it's not you versus them. It's you and them versus the market. And that's a completely different vibe. I promise you that those of you that haven't been through a really strongly shifting market, well, you have, because most of the people in this room have been through the crazy buyers market or crazy sellers market that we just experienced. What were your buyer conversations like? They're like, I don't want to spend that much. And you're like, well, then don't buy a house.
I lost buyers doing.
You're not buying a house. It was easy. The conversation was actually easy because the market did everything for you. It was so crazy that and how many of you disqualified buyers because they were going to waste your time or they weren't serious about that market? Okay, cool.
I was
Flip back to the seller.
other way.
And how did you show them that? You showed them that because you were like, hey, I put an offer in a property last night. There were 25 offers, right? It sold for 15 grand over list price. And I actually had to take a number at the driveway just to be able to pull in and out because there was so much traffic, right? Yeah, that's how you show them the picture. You have to tell the same story to the seller, but in this situation, you've got to find that data to tell that story. Does that make sense? Okay. I love when I reformat it from keynotes.
You're hyped, you're hyped.
I mean, it's.
One thing you're saying really well that I'm catching on is just the idea of saying we
Mhm.
versus me. Or
Yes,
like I,
or you.
like, we talked, we laid this out, so what do we want to do? Like, it's never, you're up here, you're in control, it's,
And it's
we're a team.
You always want the higher power.
by giving them the power.
But you
By
give them-
giving
yeah,
them,
they-
yeah.
You give them the power. So I, in the language classes that I do, we always talk about coming alongside the other person, right? So Never Split the Difference is a book written, great book, recommended it now I think 3 weeks in a row, written by Chris Voss, okay? He's literally negotiating with terrorists.
Yeah.
But he's creating rapport. How do you create rapport with a sociopath?
Dude, it's very difficult. I dealt with you.
Yeah.
Like I know.
Well, it's kind of- I see this in like my husband.
We don't need to know about the girls,
Like they're
Not
trained.
them. Oh, yeah, well,
How do you align with the bad guy?
Yeah. You have to create their alignment. Yeah.
You don't get connected to that emotional side of it.
So I'm gonna reframe that.
Okay,
You do want emotional connection, but you need a lack of judgment of the emotion,
perfect.
right? Okay.
Yes.
So that's the trick.
Yeah.
Because if you can come alongside somebody and create a safe space, like we did a role play yesterday, we were talking about creating safety through listening,
Mhm.
then you can come alongside somebody and have a really great interaction. These are the soft skills. So in sales, we talk about hard skills and soft skills. The questions of the 6 connecting questions are hard skills.
Yes.
Who's moving? Where are you going? Why are you moving? When are you going there? How do you want this transaction to look like? Right? Those are hard questions. You can literally practice them and write them down. Hard skill.
Yep.
The soft skill is the listening and saying, hey, I heard you say that it was really important to you that we got this move done before December. And I'm concerned that if we don't take the right approach on this listing and the pricing, that we won't get you there. How can I help you with that? Right? Soft, tonality, change your perspective on that. Make it about we. Like those softer skills are gonna need to come into play here. And you may not have needed those, right? The barrier for entry in an easier market is lower. And so if you want to thrive, right, we talk about survive and thrive. Survive is like hard skills. Thrive is like the we stuff. It's the little nuances of creating a story at your listing presentation that's going to serve you through the closing and afterwards, right? Making sense?
Absolutely.
So this, I have no idea what this talks about. So, the 7 maxims for pricing. Sorry, I write this on my Mac in Keynote and then translate it. So these are the 7 maxims for pricing. I would write these down, or at least go into the book and highlight and circle them. These are the 7 things, and we've already talked about these, but I think this summarizes it well.
Page 156.
Be a student of the market and know the numbers. Focus your main comps on actives. Be a student of property. Why are they selling? I think it was Nita was talking about like looking at the pictures and being like, hey, this is really nice. Or you're gonna compete against that property that has the better quality flooring or the right. And in the hyper competitive market we just left, like a lot of that stuff slid by, right? Because they were just seeking the human need of shelter. And they had to pay whatever it cost to get there. And now, if the buyer starts to have, if the buyer's looking at a $200 more expensive payment, they're going to be a little bit more discerning. And if they have 3 options instead of 0 options, they're definitely going to be more discerning. So be a student of property. Study, like it's not enough to just look at the comps. You also want to look through the pictures. Go back to those background markets and look through the pictures of those. What do you see? Go to the actives and see what the new actives, what are you seeing in the pictures?
And then drive past them. Like,
Yeah,
if your property that you're getting ready to list has like a killer hill in the back or like a terrible driveway or, you know, go look at some of these others, drive past them and, you know, even do a preview showing of just yourself sometimes of, you know, call your friend and say, hey, Abby, I know you listed 123 Main Street. Can I pop in there? I know it's already under contract, but I really need to make sure it doesn't smell like cat pee,
That's why I asked what Ryan's property was like. That's what I'm for.
Yeah.
you know?
It's cute. It's got
So-
hardwood floors.
so being a student on the property, why are they selling? Keep your presentation current. There's some great graphics I've got here, right? And I'm not, I made some of these, I made the squiggly one. But so a lot of these I just got from Google. So Google search shift, I think one of the things that I had to do, because like we just Google shift images, it doesn't get you a whole lot. Shift Keller, right? Shift Keller graphs, those types of things, and start to pull some of those things up. Put them in your marketing material. Imagine if you did a Facebook post, and not that you're gonna bore your audience with the data, but imagine if you did a Facebook post about like, where you like got out a whiteboard and drew like a clip and said, where do you want to be on the clip? And the compelling content you'd be able to create from that. Pre-qualify for motivation. Again, logic makes you think and emotion makes you act. So really digging into motivation, because when things get hard in the transaction, you have to always be able to roll back to what was the motivation. Why are there so many back on markets? It's because people were willing to quit the transaction. Right?
Pain level's not high.
The pain level's not high enough if you're willing to quit. Why were there less people quitting transactions in 2021?
Because there was no houses.
Right, which is the pain
Like
point.
you said, they needed.
So the motive, yeah, so if they were motivated enough, they were willing to do whatever it took. If the seller went back to them and said, hey, home inspection came back with like 47 items, I'm not doing a single thing. And the buyer's like, okay, so I have two choices. 47 things wrong with the house I can live in, or no house to live in. What are my choices? I'm gonna take the 47 things wrong, right? That was literally their only choice. They were motivated enough to not be homeless, so that's what they did. That is not going to exist anymore, and we're gonna have to really dig into the soft skills. So go back to those 6 connecting questions. It's like we skim through that stuff, but really dig in. Pricing ahead of the market, don't chase it, and securing the price reductions in advance. That's one of the things that Tina just shared, that we should be securing those 100% of the time.
What did that look like? Because I've never lived in a market really that
Sure.
had to.
So like I said, this kind of evolves as a puzzle or a story. So as you do the we language and you show them the graph and you show them that thing before and you say, hey, listen, we're in a little bit of an uncharted territory here. I mean, I haven't been through rates going up at this speed. And so I'm not quite sure how buyers are going to react right now. I'll say I'm cautiously optimistic that we're going to be good. And what I'm concerned about is that if my optimism is wrong, I don't want to leave us unprepared. So if we hit week 4 and we don't have pick a number of showings, what's the number of showings that would tell us that we're not good?
NAR stats say for every 10 showings, you should have 1 offer.
I was gonna say, I follow the 10 for 10 rule, but I guess like logistically, what does that look like paperwork wise, I guess, at the listing appointment?
Oh, you can actually write it in
Yeah,
You put it in the actual list?
Yeah,
Oh,
and-
okay.
in additional terms.
Just like
Yeah.
after 4 weeks, price reduction.
Yep. No,
And then-
if no agreed upon offer.
Make them sign it,
and
because
then-
they
yep,
will forget.
Yes.
Well, right, and that's where like, I've only ever really had to have discussions, like a really obvious house 4 years ago that had a steep driveway.
And you
Of
did, that, you
course,
built it in.
right, but we've never had. to
Yeah, and then
flip
do
it.
like 2 or 3, because,
Interesting.
And
if you write the first one in, that one will happen automatically more or less, because all then you do is pick up the phone and say, hey, I'm just reminding you, blah, blah, blah. But then if you have to go back and do another one and you have to go back to that kitchen table, they're gonna.
So right in that listing contract.
Yep.
And then what happened, and I think there's a bigger conversation here. It's like our service level of the listings will have to rise, because
Right.
we need to keep them in love with the selling process while it's getting harder. Right? We have to be reinvesting in them. And so one of the things that made a big difference for Ryan and I, and Megan was a huge driver of this, was our customer experience plan. And we built in our communication. And we would, so at the listing appointment, it went like this. We did all the things I've just talked about. We pre-built in our price drops. We also did this. Hey, what's your preferred method of communication? Okay, great. It's important to me that we have tons of communication, because in an uncertain market, I don't want you just going without your guide, which is me. I want to make sure we touch base at least once a week. How about every Tuesday at 4 o'clock? Does that work for you? Right, so you're pre-building in your communication schedule, you're pre-building in your price drops. Now, you call them the Tuesday before the price drop, and it's like an already built-in conversation. Hey, it's Tuesday, I'm calling with the updates. We've only had 5 showings over the course of the 4 weeks, and we were really hoping for 10, so we're half. So we know, based on the listing presentation, that we must be priced behind the market, and that's a dangerous place. So we're gonna go ahead and enact that price drop that we discussed, and we'll get that done on Thursday. Is that cool? And then with that, we're gonna do an open house on Sunday to make sure that we reinvigorate the property. I might even go in and change the order of the pictures, so you get a new front picture, an open house and a price drop all hitting at the same time. Does that
Send
sound
out
good?
Postcards.
Does that?
Yeah, it's just a script. It's just a
It's
script.
just a script.
I know.
But like, I've done that
I know.
in listing presentations. That's why I can say that. But like, that is how you have a weed approach. Because then they buy in, and if they don't buy in, you flush that out because you go back to what are the three motivational triggers that we need to have with every customer?
From a consumer or buy, selling or
All
buying?
consumers. If somebody's gonna do a transaction, they need to be ready, willing, and able. You will flush out lack of willingness.
You get your red flags real quick.
You will flush out lack of willingness. Like buyers were unwilling to participate in the crazy market of 2021. They were like, I'm out, I'm not willing to be in the market, right?
And now it's just shifting.
Now it's shifting. Sellers may be unwilling to participate in this new market, and that's gonna have to be okay.
Mhm.
The same way that you fired buyers that took you to 47 properties and then wrote 10 grand under list price, if you just wanted to stab them,
Or you
Seller.
ghosted you,
huh?
or ghosted you.
Or ghosted you, right? Did anybody else feel any of those emotions, right? We're just like, I can't believe I did that. I wasted so much time, right? You're gonna feel that on the other side.
Gotcha.
This is a really great one.
I do like buyer's markets though.
I think both have fun aspects. Sellers markets require a little bit more of a different type of nuanced approach, yeah. And buyers markets are like a little more frantic and urgent and right, it's like a little bit more of the shooting from the hip.
I always knows a guaranteed paycheck for the buyer back in the day.
So
Like, then
Like you'll
as long as I
find
showed the houses, I find them a house.
I had a meeting with, I might as well say it, when we were at Howard Hanna, Ryan and I had the opportunity to sit down with Hannah Casey. She's like, I'm a Swanepoel, like top most influential people in real estate. It's like Gary Keller and the guy from Compass, and then Helen's usually like top 10. And Helen said, lists to last. And Howard Hanna's been around since the 70s. Okay, so I think she's on something like that. So in the buyer's market, yeah, guaranteed paycheck, because you could just show enough homes and eventually write one up. But in this shifting market, listings are going to be where it's going to be at. Because now you're gonna be able to attract those buyers who are a little bit fewer and far between that you need, right? And take your listings and leverage them. The rule of thumb that Ryan and I lived by, and I hate to always just do like, we did this way, but the rule that we always lived by, the standard we set on our team was that every piece of business led to two more. And if you took that approach in buyer's market or seller's market, your attitude had to change. In a buyer's market, how do you get two more pieces of business from a buyer?
Referrals.
Referrals, what else?
Get them to buy another one.
Maybe investment property, what else?
Selling in the future,
What's that?
selling in the future.
Selling in the future, right? So you want that future business, but there's more urgently that you can do. Buyer moves in, you then door knock their 10 nearest neighbors. Hey, I just want to let you know, I was the agent that helped Jeff and Judy move in right next door. They're your new neighbors. And it was a very competitive market, but we were able to get it. And while I was here, I fell in love with your neighborhood, and I just wanted to introduce myself and see if you had anybody that you knew that might be willing to sell, because I'm sure I could get another buyer in here. Now you just created a listing opportunity from a buyer that you moved in. So flip that script. You're going to be dealing with sellers, right? You're going to have sellers properties that sit a little longer. You're going to have to do open houses. You're going to have to work the reverse,
Yeah.
right? So tactic 8 moves into staging and standing out from the competition. I'm pretty sure I have one entire slide for it. And this is it. Might be 2. It's don't ask, should I stage? It's ask, how should I stage? I think that the difference between 2008 and today is that there's a lot that relies on that first impression. Where did the first showing happen? Online, right? So making sure that your digital presence is as good as it can be, and that it would drive the activity. And then go back to what we talked about with internet lead generation and ask yourself, how do I leverage the first showing when I'm not there? Because that, I think, has become a big gap that not enough people have paid attention to. It's that now buyers and consumers have the ability to get into the property through that first showing. But in 1998, if you wanted a showing, how did you do it? You went. You like got the little book out. There was like a binder, I've heard. I wasn't around at that time. I won't judge anybody who was. there was a binder and you had to like, I'm just saying. And, right, and like you went and got the keys and you went to see it. You might be able to drive by if you could figure out the address, right, or there was a sign in the yard. Now the consumers have that readily available information. How do you position yourself right alongside that? So think about that. Go back to that web conversation, because I think when you're talking about staging and standing out, you have to combine those two. Because you need to stand out, not just within the listing itself, making sure it's the right condition, that you're going to be able to compete against the people, that you're doing high definition photos, no more cell phone pictures, please, thank you. And that you are making sure that you are advising your consumers to declutter and stage properly. Because, right, go back, buyers had two choices: homeless or property that was cluttered and had a laundry list of problems. They were going to be okay with cluttered and laundry list of problems. That won't exist anymore. And now you're gonna have to compete against other properties where maybe they were willing to clean their laundry up before picture day. Right? So setting that stage and those expectations and that script in your listing presentation is gonna be critical, because you're gonna be able to go back to those graphs if you choose to use them and show them that that first impression is really important, right? So if they're not willing to take the evening before the photos to like clean their stuff up, are they ready, willing, and able to the level that they're going to compete in this market? Maybe not.
I struggle with navigating between like what they can and can't do though. Like Erin and I were just at a listing appointment last night together, and like the whole house needs painted and it's a divorce situation, and it's just realistically, it's just not gonna happen. And so trying to balance that conversation of, we understand this isn't doable for you, but then listing, we can't list next to this price.
Well,
So,
It's a switch
control,
cost.
yeah, control what you can control.
It's a
You have
switch
to
cost,
reduce
right?
the Price.
so I think people appreciate that conversation too, though. Like, look, I understand this isn't in the cards for you. However,
Do you want to hear like some kind of craziness that was going on back in the day? We were like staging with physical furniture and vacant homes. We were doing the high definition photos, the Matterports, all those things, and offering buyers 1 point pre-buy down of the rate, like
Home inspection.
Yeah, home inspection, like,
paying
like
warranties.
yeah.
to-
this is now the time to really start to think about that. And I'm not saying that we're quite where we need to be doing all that stuff, but when you're in those conversations, planting those seeds that like.
we at
and-
my listing, we're 15K over the other comps. I've been sitting for 30 days, and we're offering a 5K credit towards like painting and repairs.
Yeah.
So like luckily that seller's on board, but what about the sellers that?
you wanna
And
hear-
you know.
sometimes you can get like a quote from a painter and like leave that on the kitchen table, you know?
But here's the trade, and this is one of the things we learned in the last check, was that the credit doesn't change the search criteria.
Yes, so we listed at 255 because he wants that credit. I told him I would love to be under that 250. So
Yeah.
yeah,
You see
absolutely.
what happens there?
You gotta
So
weigh that.
Yeah, then you start to weigh that out, and
Mhm.
now all of a sudden, maybe he's at 250 with a $2,000 credit, and you just, because you,
Sure.
it's you have choices here, right? You're either gonna do price drop, we're gonna offer something that's actually finally attractive enough that we sell, or we're not gonna sell.
Mhm.
Go back to the motivation. So based on your motivation of needing to do blank, what do you think we should do here?
Mhm.
See? So I just generally ask this question, and I would challenge you guys to think about it, like, how are you preparing to present properties differently? She's already doing that, offering a $5,000 credit, and still sitting for 30 days, by the way, right?
Well, not us yet, but.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something to think about though,
Yeah.
right? Like, because agents are gonna start to get more creative. So on the investment side of things, I will tell you this was an absolutely alarming day yesterday.
Really?
Yeah. But here's the alarming thing. What do you think investment loan rates are right now?
Usually about a point higher average, right?
8%.
8%
Yeah.
plus.
That's just normal. Our money lenders are like 11 to 13 now. There used to be at like 8 to 10.
That's right.
Our money lenders are like up to 13 right now. That's crazy.
So 8%. So what was alarming yesterday was we had to change all the pro formas for our turnkey rental sales. So here's a pro forma is basically where you figure out the math of like how good of a deal you're looking at, right? Like what's the cash flow, the cash on cash return, the cap rate.
Like cut your losses essentially?
Well, we are not having to do that yet.
It's essentially doing your homework.
But it's, yeah,
Your
you're
investment.
analyzing the quality of the deal, right?
Yes.
So one of the things that we do there, we don't do as many retail flips. I don't know if anybody's noticed that, but like, we just don't have like, back in the day, we had 20 properties on the market and all, all fancy and fixed up. We actually don't do that very much at all. We do some, We're doing more new construction and we're doing what was called turnkey rental sales, which is when we buy a fixer upper and then we improve it for rental purposes, because York is actually a really great bedroom community market for that exact type of sale. And it keeps us out of the fray of retail buyers and sellers. And tends to be more predictable, but when we change the pro forma, which we just did, like all it took was changing one algorithm, one formula. We need better deals, right? Because going from 6% to 8% was a big game changer. Now we're looking at, okay, what's the story we tell here? Like you're buying into the equity, you're buying into the tax depreciation, you're buying into the long-term cash on cash return, but maybe the cap rate on the short term isn't as good. Like you need to be prepared to tell the story and present those deals. Because for us, we're not presenting a house necessarily. It's not a beautiful house. We're presenting a deal. So like, what's the way that you're presenting it?
Essentially, you're presenting an investment for the buyer.
Yeah. So understanding and creating urgency. I think urgency is going to come back to these three motivational triggers: ready, willing, and able. And how does your conversation need to change around those? I left this very short because actually I think we've covered a lot of this, right? So I suspected we would, because as we went through tactic 6, 7, 8, and you're starting to talk about the shifting market, how to create the pricing strategy and all of those types of things, you can't do any of those without the conversation around urgency. So it goes back to ready, willing, and able, and how your conversation changes. I would recommend a really deep read of tactic 9, because I think really paying attention to the finesse of urgency is important. But for today, it's going to be about this right here, page 168. In a shift, buyers can easily lose sight of the primary reasons driving their home purchase: a different neighborhood, better school district, proximity to work or recreation, different floor plan, more space, and become hyper-focused on price and price alone. With so many homes for sale, too many potential buyers buy into the biggest myth of a shift. They think that they can time the market, and that's impossible, basically, is what he says. So some of the ways that you can create an energized urgency are the things we've already talked about. Become the local economist of choice. I can't say it enough. Track the data. Watch the local data. Help them tap into their why. That's the hard and soft skills of conversation that you've got to be refining. How often are we role playing?
Every day.
Every day. Every day. We're reading books about negotiating with hostages, and we're role playing every day. We are absolutely uncompromising on getting better at those skills, because we know that lead conversion is already going down. We are seeing it. We are seeing it already, and we run at a very huge scale. So we have a good sample size, and we are seeing it.
Not even the conversion, just the leads. Leads in general are down, like in general.
Not mathematically, but our conversions are down.
Hmm.
And so it feels down.
That's how. Yes, it feels like it. Yes.
But that's alarming, right? Because he's like, our leads are down. I'm like, no, they're actually not. But the conversions are. And addressing buyer reluctance. And this just comes back to what we've talked about, which is like the buyers are coming out of the psychology of the prior existing market and making sure that we're pre-pacing them. That's it. I think the last thing there, and we, again, this is a rephrase because we've already talked about it within the other context of the other topics, is nothing trumps their buyer's personal motivations and reasons for moving. Who, what, when, where, how, and why. Those are your ammunition. And walking in, so I have a MAPS coach still, even though I haven't sold a house in a year. And I shared with her what we use for our call audits. We audit every single call that's recorded at the company. And one of the grading criteria is, did we ask all of the 6 connecting questions? Who, what, when, where, how, and why? I would challenge you. And by the way, I was talking to her about that, and she was like, oh my God, that's a game changer. She's working mega agents and mega teams across the country. And she's like, nobody is doing that level of intentionality around getting better at their appointments and their calls. So she stole our audit form, because I built a little form for it. And she stole it and gave it to all those agents. Complete game changer. I would challenge you to go through your, and this goes to Abby's ask at the beginning. It's like, how do I move people forward? This is how you're going to do it, because you can't, the market won't dictate them moving. It's their motivation. Nothing will trump their personal motivation for moving. So Here's my challenge, is go to your pipeline, anybody that you've been in conversation with who's a buyer or seller, and go back to that pipeline and ask, do I have the answer to all 6 of those questions? And do I know what their motivation would be for moving? Why did we have a conversation on real estate? And I would bet that next week, if somebody does this, if somebody really takes that advice and goes after it, I would bet that somebody moves somebody forward in the pipeline and probably either gets a buyer agency, a seller agency, or somebody under contract. Because it's those simple conversations, all you do is you follow up and you just say, hey, I was thinking back on our situation here, and I feel like I don't know 100% what we can do together. And I was just curious, like, what's your ideal timeline? Like, I don't want to stalk you and I don't want to ignore you. So what's the timeline so that I can pace our communication and be on the same page? That's a timeline question. It's a when, right? Ideally, when would you move? Ideally, like, I feel like I know a somewhat of an idea of what you're looking for, and I set you up on a search, but I'm gonna, like, where do you want to be? If you could pick the neighborhood, great question to ask, by the way. If you could pick the neighborhood and draw a circle around exactly where you want to live, where would that be? And if they give you an answer and you look and there's nothing for sale there, what do you just do?
Send out a golden letter.
Yeah. Now you can go lead generate for that. Which, by the way, I said, if you do this activity, you'll lead to business, because that's how you'll get a listing agreement off of a buyer that you didn't have all the information for. See what I mean? So hopefully that's helpful. I think that was it. Sure.
I
Yeah.
have a quick question for you. I lost to a ideal agent lead, so I was talking to a potential seller and she canceled the listing appointment with me. And I finally got her to answer a text. And she said, no, I signed with Ideal Agent for 2%. So how does that work? I mean, does Ideal Agent turn around and pay 2% to the buyer agent? Or as the selling agent, are you expected to split your 2% to 1% you and 1% the?
I actually don't know.
I would like to know how this works.
I actually don't know that.
Well, I think we need to find out because they're in town now.
No, that's,
So-
that's a great thing you brought up. I saw a commercial the other day and it caught my attention. I'm like, damn, might be almost out of
That
business.
commercial has
Says-
been running.
It says
quite a
list
while.
as low as 2%. It's nationwide. It's called the Ideal Agent.
Right,
And
I
that's.
think,
coming.
if I'm correct, I think it's just the listing agent side is 2%, and then they still offer a buyer agent, or they make that's.
see, I don't know.
So the only way I think, so like what he says, what can we control? We can control our skills and what we do. That's gotta be the best of what we do, because that's still a virtual guide compared to being local.
Mhm.
When you have that local presence, like you're connecting, you're following up.
It was a local agent, but it was connected through Ideal Agent. I mean, I've been in situations where like you're competing, you're competing against, maybe somebody has a referral
Yeah.
program, or there's some type of credit or whatever, and you're competing against these weird things. Rapport is always the only way to fight that.
I need to find out what your deal is so that I can have that discussion.
Yeah.
Because I don't even know, I don't know how they, and
I
I
would
went
call
on
them
their
back and ask them.
website, I went on their website. They don't give out any information. You can't figure anything out on your
Well,
own.
just call them back and ask them, hey, I've been thinking about it and I want to know, maybe Ideal Agent's program I want to be a part of. Can you tell me what it was that was so attractive that you signed on for it? And then
Yeah.
help, just do some guerrilla warfare.
Hopefully she'll talk to me.
Yeah. So does anybody have any questions? Was this helpful, class?
Sure.
Very helpful. Thank you.
Sure, thank you.
Yeah,
Appreciate it. Anybody have any questions or anything else? Awesome. I thought we'd be done early and chatting all the way through that seller urgency stuff. Okay, guys, appreciate it. Have a great day. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. This was very informative.
Thank you.
I won't be able to be here next week as I have a board meeting.
Yeah.
You just need me to promise me?
Yeah, if you can help, and you can, if you want me to do one for you too, because you're doing an open house this weekend, right?
No, actually I'm not.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I just wanted to do one for the open.
Yeah.
I didn't get my coffee this morning.
How are you guys living?
That's what I just said to myself.